Welcome to the Alita Army channel. This is Radio KAOS, the voice of the Alita Army, episode 65, interview with Billy Blair, Zapan's crony, and comparing Alita Battle Angel and Bladerunner. What does it mean to be human? Where we discuss all things to do with the movie Alita Battle Angel, the source manga Gun, and the greatly desired sequels. I'm the host for this episode, Max Tech, and with me are Angelus in Brisbane, Australia.
G'day, mates.
Muskogee Creek in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, hey, Alita Army.
Star Rebellion was supposed to be here, but he's not there. Okay, so Star hasn't made it. And for guests, today we have a big lineup of guests. We were supposed to have Billy Blair. Oh, no, he's made it. There he is, down the bottom.
I'm right here.
Thank you so much for showing up. We were a bit worried.
I finally made it.
what the listeners may not realize is that during that musical interlude and the entry video, we can't actually talk to each other and we can't see anybody arriving. So Billy's like got here on the 11th hour and 59-minute mark before the show started. But it's terrific to have you on, Billy. It's
good to be here. I got messed up with the time frame. I forgot you guys are a different time. I guess it's you're like an hour ahead where I'm at. So I was thinking 5 o'clock my time.
We did drop all the times because we calculated for the entire world because this is a global fandom. So I'm pretty sure we did drop you the correct time, but I'll have to check in on that. But Billy Blair, just so that people got some context, Billy was one of the main extras in the Alita Battle Angel movie with 2 speaking lines. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I had more, but they got cut.
Apparently, that happens a lot. And you're down in Texas.
I'm in Texas. Yeah.
Terrific. So if you just let me introduce the other guests we've got on, we'll get on to the interview, which Angelus is going to do. So we also have Foxfire in Germany. G'day, Foxfire.
Hello, guys.
We have both members of the Sci-Fi Remnant. I thought we were only going to have Robert because Giancarlo is usually working, but he's here as well. So we've got Robert and Giancarlo from the podcast, the Sci-Fi Remnant. Thanks for coming back, guys.
Thank you for inviting us.
Is Giancarlo there or did he drop off? He's there. He's just very quiet. He's still muted. Okay. So he may have personally muted himself, but that happens occasionally. And last but by no means least, we have one of my very close friends, Doc Joe from Storyweaver Games. G'day, Doc Joe.
How you doing? And Billy, I've had the exact same issue that you've had, crossing time zones.
Yeah.
Let's just go for flat Earth. It's a lot easier. You and me both, mate. You and me both.
Yeah, what happened to that? I thought we were in the flat Earth area.
But Doc Joe's been on the Alita stream on a Friday night US, and he's very interested in science fiction and the idea of cyborg technology and what it means to be human. So he'll be very, very keen to talk about the main topic after the interview. But we might leave introducing the new guest for the main topic a bit later, but we'll just jump straight into Billy's interview so we don't chew up a lot of Billy's time. But again, thank you very much for joining us, Billy. We really appreciate it.
Oh man, I'm honored. I mean, I'm glad that I finally made some time to get on your show.
Yeah, that's terrific. So, Angelus, are you there?
I'm here and ready to rock and roll.
Okay, kick it in the guts, man. Go for it.
Something I'm sure that Billy knows a lot about, being a musician himself.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, just as a bit of a heads up, there's no right or wrong answers. You're the star guest here, so you're the information central. But awesome. These first couple of questions is something that you could say that the fandoms are on either side of the fence of. And you'll see why in a minute. But first question is pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Wow, I talked about this on another interview. It's like
oh wow,
deja vu. Pineapple on pizza. It depends. If you're like if you consumed a lot of special herb, it might go hand in hand. I don't know.
Well, funnily enough, for me personally, anyway, like I quite often add pineapple as an extra topping because pizzas down here in Australia, the vegetarian ones don't always have pineapple on them.
Oh wow!
So like I'd add pineapple and olives and a few other toppings that people sort of might retch over. But anyway, but yeah, as long as you.
But what about this? Anchovies on pizza.
Oh, now we hit the dark side.
Right?
I'll see your anchovies and raise you. I make my own anchovies for my pizza. I actually cure my own anchovies. Anchovies are a religion in this household.
Oh wow!
Well, I prefer that special herb you were talking about, Billy, here in Colorado. I kind of like that herb.
Colorado, right? Isn't it free out there? It's like a free state to smoke it, right?
Why does everybody get so excited about oregano? I don't understand it.
Oregano.
Yeah, you say tomato or you say tomato.
Yeah,
there you go.
Next one, and it has various names, especially depending if you're from the UK or not. But have you ever tried Vegemite or Marmite, as it's known in the northern UK sort of area? And what are your thoughts on it, if you have?
I want to say yeah. I've heard of that, Vegemite. Or did I hear that in a song?
Have you tried it before, or was it just something you've heard of?
I don't know if I tried it or not.
We're
talking about like a smoking substance, right?
Yes.
Well, it's a spread, much like a peanut butter or something like that.
Nah, I don't think I have.
That's all right.
So. And if I did, I don't remember.
That's right.
I was already on the other side if I was, and I just totally forgot. I don't know.
Well, funnily enough, Vegemite is if I'm not mistaken, a byproduct of the process of making beer.
Wait a minute. That's where I heard it. I heard it on a song. Yeah, from Men at Work. I knew I heard that.
Wow. Land Down Under.
Vegemite sandwich. Remember?
Yeah, that is correct.
Where have I heard that?
But
it's a real
all
thing.
right, it is. But now down to the serious ones. When the movie was released in 2019, did you see it when it came out, whether at the premiere or maybe with your family or friends?
Yeah, I was there with Ed Screen, everybody. I mean, Robert. I've worked with Robert like for 10 years, so I mean I think that's how I got into movie. Cameron, I hung out with him. Everybody, the whole cast, I was there. It was really fun. It was in LA at the I want to say the Chinese Theater.
Oh wow! I still have dreams of attending something like that, but no, that's awesome. And we've actually got quite a few questions later on down the track, specifically about Robert as well. So, there's always a source material behind most adaptations, but when you were introduced to the project, did you go in blind, or were you aware of the source material prior to even reading the script?
No, I was aware of the. You know, I watched the cartoon animation movie.
Yep.
And it's very similar. I think I want to say there's like this movie's like combined of two of the animation stories. I mean, I know the hardcore fans are going to say no, but I mean, I thought that's what I saw. I'm not like a hardcore fan, but I knew what I was coming into, and you know, it's an exciting thing because also like my oldest at the time, she was young. She liked that stuff. I mean, she liked the animes. So I was
our
aware.
Understanding is that the initial rights that James Cameron got were actually for the OVA, and then he extended it to the manga when he wanted Motorball to put in it. So that's why the OVA and the movie actually share a lot of scenes, and why Sheeran's in it, because he actually used the OVA as his source material first, and then expanded it to the manga second.
Ah, well, there you go. I knew it was something like that.
And just to give you a bit of an example too, like Maxax just said, Sheeran is a character from the OVA, but the scene that's the first fight between Gruishka and Alita, which is after the Kansas bar fight. There's a scene where he speaks that he wants to make her into a living pendant to adorn his chest.
Yeah.
And that is almost I wouldn't say a translation, but a direct, I guess, interpretation from a certain panel in the manga itself, or graphic novel, as it's probably known in the Western world.
It's damn near word for word from the manga.
Yeah, so
nice.
I guess that's another reason why, for the most part, most adaptations sort of bomb, whereas this one did really well. Well, in my opinion, it did really well because everyone, like the script writers, the directors, cast and crew in general, really got into the source material, and that's I reckon one of the few keys to making it successful.
Yeah.
But considering that it is coming from both manga and OVA or animation, what was your reaction when you found out that the movie itself had developed such a cult following as pop culture defines it today?
It blows me away. I mean, it's, sometimes you don't know until, of course, you're like in the inside looking out. You don't see how big it is until you kind of step out and you look in. And, some of the fans that reached out to me for it, it's just like, it's very incredible. It's just like, this thing is, it definitely has a cult following. I mean, it's I want to say it's kind of almost up there with Star Wars. I could imagine like anybody in the Star Wars franchise getting all that much, love or attention. So, I'm excited to be part of it.
Well, considering that Star Wars got a few sequels, with any luck, and fingers crossed, we'll get a few as well.
That's my next goal right there.
So if your goal is to get a sequel to Alita Battle Angel, consider yourself part of the Alita army. That's the interim requirement.
I don't want to, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up or say that there is going to be one. Yeah. But I remember talking to James Cameron on set, and I did mention it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, there's going to be a sequel."
He wants one, certainly. Yeah, we know as much.
Yeah, so he does want one. I just don't know when it's gonna happen.
Well, the first one took 10 years to make, so
man. Took a long time.
It was getting closer to 16 years, man.
16 years, eesh, almost 2 decades.
Well, we had Leda Calligridis on, and she was writing it in 2001, and it didn't get filmed to 2016. It didn't get released till 2019. So these things take time when their Cameron works.
Yeah, you got to take your time to release a masterpiece. Fellow director friend of mine is doing that right now with a film I did. It's independent, but he's like, he tells me he's French, so he's all, Billy, you got to take time on a masterpiece. I get it. Take your time.
Can't, as one of my martial arts instructors say, you can't rush perfection.
Exactly.
So, and that actually answered our next question, which is involving if a sequel was greenlit, and seeing as both Japan and yourself were the characters were one of few that weren't killed off. If you show up in one, so like I said, fingers crossed. We'll see you in the next one as well.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat, man. I got my fingers crossed.
Speaking of which, when it comes to the actual role itself, and you did sort of touch on it earlier on, how did you get the role of being one of Japan's two cronies, and were you giving much backstory, like the history, or like how your character got his bionic arm and details like that?
They didn't give me a story on that. They just cast me and said, "Here, you're gonna have a bionic arm," But I actually read for Robert had me read for a lot of roles, especially now I forget the names of the characters, but the Chef Fay, his character, the one with the dogs.
Oh yeah, McTeague.
Yeah, I read for that character. There was some other ones too. I can't remember, but I got the crony one. So, I mean, that's how it's brought in. It was just, you show up and they give you your attire and then you go on set.
Have you read the novelization at all, written by Pat Cadigan?
I have not. No.
You were mentioned in it.
Am I mentioned?
Crony's mentioned in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well, let's just say in the novelization, they have a lot more leeway in what they can put in, obviously being a different medium. And obviously that means the speaking roles that would have been cut on the cinematic release would have been in the book. And Pat Cadigan, I believe, had like access to like an earlier version of the script. So obviously there would have been more details there as well before everything got sort of.
I know that's always a bummer. It's always a bummer for an actor, when they get their lines cut. But I was lucky enough to get that one in there. So
excellent. All right. Considering that your character is in like quite a few scenes in the movie, what was it like on the Iron City set in general?
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, the whole setup. That's actually like he actually had like a city built in the studio. And then everything else is just like CGI, like the sky and then everything else. But he had a miniature city built for that, and then of course the bar scene that was built, and we shot that scene. That whole scene was shot like a week. It took a week to shoot. Just pretty much. The bar scene in general and the fighting scene, because they have to, go on one side of the set to shoot everything this way. And that was time consuming, of course. And then they have to reverse the camera to shoot the other direction. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of work.
Just a quick question. You weren't shown any of these questions prior to the interview, right?
I'm sorry?
You weren't shown any of the questions that we're asking prior to the interview, because I swear to God, you must have like Jedi powers or something, because that's the exact next question that we've got for you.
Oh yeah, no, that's just I got Jedi powers. I need to be in the Star Wars. I did not get no questions whatsoever.
Yeah, because
pick up share screen.
The next one was giving us a rundown of your experience of filming the bar scene.
Oh yeah.
So and
everything's time consuming. I remember like the first, might have been the first day I was on set. I mean, they shoot like, definitely it's a night scene. So they shoot from once the sun is down all the way to the crack of dawn. So I remember we were waiting on the scene. I was waiting on my scene where they're outside towards the end, where they're outside, where she brings out she goes inside and brings out the head. So that, right, I remember right when they were going to shoot me, the sun just cracked, and they're like, oh, got to shoot tomorrow night or later tonight. I was like ready to go on set or ready to shoot my scene and all in costume, and then sun just cracked. Oh, we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, Billy, one of your speaking lines did end up in the movie. That was the one you were standing behind Zapan, and he asked you, "Are you going to kill him?
Are you going to kill her?"
Yeah,
yeah. I asked her if he's going to kill her. Yeah, that's why I was like, "Yay!" They kept one line, and
hey, it's better than no lines.
Exactly, it is. But I get it.
We've had quite a number of extras on who didn't have any speaking lines. So you're actually the first. You're actually the first person who's had a speaking line in the entire movie that we've had on. So there you go.
Cool.
There's an honor.
Well, again, it's an honor for me to jump on this, man. I really wanted to. Believe me, I wasn't avoiding it whatsoever. I just my.
Well, we know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I get really busy. But I made sure, I was like, okay, I got a Saturday open. I put on my phone, everything. I wrote sticky notes all over the place.
Now, I know you mentioned Ed Skrein a lot, but did you get to talk to any of the other stars? Like, I mean, I know you interacted with his characters of Pan, but considering that, there's quite a lot of even award winners on that cast list alone. Like, did you not just talk to, but even just sort of generally hang out with? What were they like? Do you have any interesting stories that you feel safe telling us about your time on set with them and whatnot?
Oh man, we're of course during a downtime when we're in between takes. I mean, we're all laughing, looking at social media, talking about they were like co-workers, when you're working with somebody and you're part of them. That's how it was. I mean, I don't know. It was second nature to me. I mean, I always do that when I'm online or when I'm on set. So yeah, you just have a basic conversation. I don't know, just whatever comes up in the mind. Shoot the shit.
As a bit of a side question, I know it would have been for a different movie and a different interview, or maybe like a Blu-ray sort of special feature. But I know someone mentioned somewhere that Rodriguez treats casting crew like a second family, especially when they're on set as well. And he likes to try to use and reuse as many extras and crew as possible, and rather than just shift crew to crew.
If you look at his other films from Machete, I was in Machete, and Machete Kills, Sin City 2, and then now Alita. So yeah, he likes to use the actors that he likes. I mean, fortunately, I was one of them to work with him for a good 10 plus years. So yeah, it's very true.
Well, we can skip the next question because he answered that again.
It's my Jedi powers.
I swear, he's definitely got something special there, especially if someone of Rob Rod's caliber is reusing you. So,
speaking of Star Wars, Robert's been shooting working with the Star Wars world.
Because it's the Book of Boba Fett series as well.
Yeah, well, he did. I don't know if he did a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, but I know he did
one.
He did one. So
one of the better ones.
I talked to him periodically, and then one of the things he said, he's like, "Hey, I'm in LA working Star Wars," and I was like, "Dude, congratulations!" I mean, he was a big Star Wars fan. I mean, you could see that in his movies, especially in Machete Kills. There's a lot of Star Wars kind of inspiration there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's down as a producer for the Book of Boba Fett, but that's not due out until I think mid next year or late next year. So he's still got to get onto that yet.
I'm hoping. One could only hope. I can't say for sure. You know, nothing's set in stone. But I would at least, you know, hopefully I could read for it. You know.
Well, look, you've absolutely got the Jedi look and vibe down pat, so there's no problem. Or Sith, but I reckon Jedi.
I could pass as Obi-Wan's lost son. I don't know.
I think that's Jedi, but yeah, absolutely.
That's yet another different show. That's the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which is, you know, something
I can't wait. I'm excited about that. Yeah, they're bringing Anakin Skywalker, the guy, whatever his name is.
Hayden Christensen.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm excited for that.
Well, another Rod specific question is, knowing how both him and yourself are musicians, have you ever jammed with him, whether it be in the downtime that you mentioned or on or off set? And again, is there any stories you could tell us if it did occur?
Well, I jammed with his band, not with him in it, but his Chingon band. I'm friends with those guys. Yeah. I jammed with them acoustically one night at a party. I'll tell you this, I did not jam with Robert, but we talked about, for the longest time, I wanted him to direct a music video for my band. And this goes way back when we did Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. It just never happened. I mean, you know, he's a busy guy. So I recently even asked him, and that's when he said, you know, he was busy, and he goes, "Man, I'm shooting Star Wars." I'm like, "Oh, well, by all means, I would rather do that than shoot my lousy music video." But yeah, I mean, we came that close, and I still hope, and I want to still ask him, like, man, you know, will you please shoot one music video with my band, just one, just with your name.
Here's how you could put them together. Picture a cantina scene with your band in the cantina. Exactly. That's the way to do it.
I would love that.
You might be wearing some prosthetics, though.
I am down. Even if I'm just fully animated, I don't care.
What instrument do you play, Billy?
I play guitar. Well, I mean, for the longest time, I played bass. Back in the day, you know. Then I started off guitar, played bass. Now I've been playing guitar. I sing, you know, play a little piano here and there, but my main instrument's guitar. And you can look it up. I mean, anybody that's listening, I mean, go check out my Lovesick Drug Band. It's in all the platforms.
We'll put your website in the show notes so that people can find you, Billy.
Or in the description below when it gets uploaded to YouTube.
Awesome. They're actually called show notes as well, surprisingly enough.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Now,
but hey, one thing I wanted to bring up, because he's notorious. He's notorious. I was going to bring this up as far as jamming. Of course, Robert always breaks out the guitar on set. Yeah, I'm sure you know that.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's done that. He does that on all the films. Breaks out the guitar, the acoustic jams. I mean, it's iconic.
There was a short video of him playing his guitar off screen, you know, in between shots on the set of Mandalorian, and they had the little Grogu puppet dancing around to him playing the guitar.
Yeah, that's just great to have, you know. It's just great to have and post up jamming with Baby Yoda or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Like, and that's why I added the question, because I knew that like there was a video floating around of Robert dancing with like the animated Baby Yoda puppet, and seeing you guys were both musicians, I thought that might have been something that you did in downtime as well, just to sort of relax and de-stress. I mean,
Yeah.
music in general is just a great way to de-stress. So,
yeah, especially somebody in that caliber. I mean, somebody that works that hard, and man, it's just like nobody sees it, but when you're there behind the scenes watching it happen, and Robert, I would have to say, is one of the hardest working directors out there, and that's why he's where he's at, and that's another thing that James Cameron was telling us, is that on set it was great. He's sharing us the story. He's like, he didn't trust anybody but Robert to do it, because Robert knew how to do all the, I guess, the effects and everything. Like, he studied all that. So that's why he let him do Alita.
There's a Blu-ray release in Australia which actually didn't drop anywhere else in the world, strangely enough, and it has an extra disc in it with a 20-minute video of Rob Rod and Jim sitting there just having a bromance with each other, talking about how wonderful each other is. And you can see it, none of it was scripted. It was just, them sitting there saying how much they appreciate each other.
Yeah, very real. Yeah. I remember hearing the story, and I think James was telling us, is that they were at James's house playing guitar. They were jamming. I guess he plays too. And as Robert was leaving, Robert had asked, "Hey, do you have anything I could do?" And James like, "You mean direct?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Come back inside, let's talk." And then that's when they did they talked about the Alita.
It was a lunch that they had, apparently.
Yeah,
they were at lunch.
Yeah,
but yeah, pretty much exactly the way you describe it.
Yep, that's what happened.
Well, something else that I really like Rob Spod for specifically is that he seems to have like a Midas touch, because it seems like he can just make something from scraps and make it like beautiful, sort of thing. And like whether it be going back as far as Desperado, Dust Till Dawn, Sin City, and now Alita, you give him any budget, you give him any script, any story, and he'll practically make bank with it every time. And just the way he does it. And like, I know I've read other parts where like if he doesn't like it, he'd try to like do quite a lot of the work himself as well, even coming down to like changing the lights around and whatnot. So yeah, like when you tell us that about working with Rob, then yeah, we know it's legit.
Oh yeah. And the cool thing is that he has a style. It's like when you watch it, it's a Robert Rodriguez movie.
But he's also good at copying other people's style. So he stated that when he did Sin City, he was doing it in a Miller style, and when he did Alita, he was doing it in a Cameron style. So not only does he have his own style, he's not stuck to it. He can morph his style into other people's styles and make it greater than the sum of the parts.
But it's got the Robert feel to it, because he'll bring in the Mexican culture to it. I don't want to say makes fun of it, but it's funny in some senses, but there is that style in there. Like, of course you gotta stamp it with, your name. But yeah, you're right. He was going with the James Cameron feel, kind of like Avatar.
But speaking of the film industry in general as well, like any average Joe would be able to load up IMDb or any sort of movie webpage. But can you tell us a bit about what you've been doing since then, both in and outside of the film industry?
Well, I mean, I've been working a lot as far as independent films. I mean, that's a good thing. When you do big films like that, independent film directors, they see you and hope to work with you, and I always want to work. But I've been doing, if you go on my IMDb page, you'll see a list of all the movies I've done. But I did the other Rob director, the one I've been wanting to work with forever. That's Rob Zombie. I did his movie, 3 from Hell. I was excited about that. That was about.
I was actually itching to ask you about that because I'm a horror fan. What was it like with Rob Zombie? Also on the musical side, I mean, there's clear parallels there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, another guy I would love to work with as far as like doing music with, but hopefully down the line we'll be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, I ever since what was it? House of a Thousand Corpse, and I was a big White Zombie fan. I was just always like, I got to work with him. I got to work. Each movie that came out, I would tell my agent, I want to get in that. And then the one time I don't ask, I get cast. Isn't it crazy?
That's a little bit like falling in love, isn't it?
Yeah. And then my agent nonchalantly is telling me about one thing, and then she goes, "Oh, by the way, you got cast in 3 from Hell." I'm like, "What?" I did. I didn't even have to read for it. All right. Luckily, actors have a reel, so they book you off that. It's like, oh, I'm glad I have it.
Yeah, looking at your IMDb page, Billy, it looks like you don't have a lot of free time.
Well, the band stuff, that takes your time as well, and being a dad, and other stuff. It's just I like to stay busy.
If it's okay, I'd love to ask you a question about being a dad. So when you took your family to the premiere, to the opening, what was their reaction?
Well, I didn't take my family over there. It was I had to go on I don't want to say I had to go on my own dime. I went with my manager. I always some stuff like that. I like if it's like LA, because I'm in Texas. So if there's a premiere here, I'll take my family. Mainly like my 2 daughters. Like my oldest daughter is getting into the film business. I'm helping her out. My youngest, she doesn't know quite yet what she wants, but I put her in one of my low budget movies that's going to come out later this year. But no, but when I do take them, I mean, they're like, wow, and the youngest doesn't really get it. I mean, she's just like, eh. But my oldest, she loves it. That's why she wants to get into the business.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Parenting 101, you get your foot in the door for your kids any which way you can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to help them.
Let them follow their dreams, but be the stepping stones. Yep.
But I leave it up to them. It's like,
yes.
You want to do it? I can help you.
Well, your Jedi powers are at work again, so I'll cross that question off.
It's a must. It's a must. We need to get Lucasfilm involved here. Hey, it's a must.
Well, I think it's a combination of your Jedi powers, Billy, and Angelus's questions. They flow on so naturally. So well done, Angelus.
There we go.
Yes. The next question does sort of, again, like you mentioned, flow on from the previous one. But looking at your filmography, a lot of them are a mix of like dark, gritty, somewhat noir, but even always involving some level of action and suspense. Is that something that you're, I guess, content with? Not necessarily saying typecast, but is it something that you're happy to sort of settle into, or is there something that you'd rather expand into, like other areas or genres, if the opportunity to arise?
Well, going to the area where we talk about typecast, a fellow actor that I work with said it best. It's like, it's better to be typecast than not cast. But I'm always like, hey, I'm up for anything. I like to work, and being cast as like a bad guy is always fun. I mean, that's where you could get creative, get in dark, make it mysterious, stuff like that. I mean, I went to theater in college, so I learned how to, develop those kind of characters, and that's fun. But to play something else, like, I mean, I don't think I have a look to play like what's his name from forgetting name, Chris Pratt kind of thing.
Oh, yep.
But I would like to try. Why not? Yeah, be the good guy.
I mean, you could even go for a role in a musical type of movie.
Oh yeah,
you'd fit right in.
Do it. You're like Grease.
Maybe or a School of Rock sequel.
School of Rock. I'm not opposed.
I think. All right. Now, coming down to the last one here before we tend to questions from perhaps other panel members or even YouTube chat.
Okay.
But everyone has different personal tastes. You've probably heard of the old saying, "It's just not my cup of tea."
Yeah.
So whether it's been Alita or another movie, what's been one of your most favorite or memorable experiences on any set or movie that you've worked on?
Well, it's got to be the ones that I have a bigger part. Those are always fun, when you're on set like for a month. But the cool thing about, like, even if it's a day player, week player, whatever it is, the bigger budgets. I mean, you get taken care of more so than independent. I mean, they can afford it. And then you're with the big stars, and then you have those stories to talk about. Like one of them was when I did The Last Stand with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Forrest Whitaker. Is my experience with working with Forrest Whitaker, and then him complimenting me. It's just stuff like that you remember like forever. It's like, wow, one of your heroes. It's telling
Tell
you
your grandkids about.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Wow, Forrest Whitaker, that's another big name. I mean, Arnie's a big name in itself, but I know a lot of Forrest's work. Like one of his movies that I did most might not be aware of is Ghost Dog, and I loved him in that movie as well. And I mean,
Ghost Dog. I got to catch up on my movies, but yeah. I heard about that one, and I would love to see it. That's on my list, believe me.
Well, I'm also a horror fan myself, so I'll definitely be adding the what was it? The three
from Hell.
3 from Hell, but that was directed by Rob Zombie, was it?
Yeah, Rob Zombie. It's in the trilogy of House of a Thousand Corpse, Devil's Reject. And then now 3 from Hell. It's all like a trilogy story. One thing though, when you watch 3 from Hell, you're not going to recognize me because they made me wear a mask. But I'm one of the Black Satans, and I have it up on my reel. I get tagged by Sherry Moon with an arrow right in the neck. Anyway, I'll tell you a funny story or a great story about that. It was like, okay, I was like, I'm wearing this mask. I'm one of the Black Satans, so I'm gonna get pegged on the neck with an arrow from Sherry Moon. So I'm like, how can I make this memorable? You start to think as an actor, you get your wheels rolling. And it's right there on the spot because I didn't have time to, plan this out. So I'm like, I gotta make this worth watching. So I go, okay, I got it. So we did the scene where I come in. I guess it's a motel room we're at, and then I come in, you see my silhouette through the. I don't want to give any spoilers. But anyways, so they do the camera trick where they put they put a collar on you, I believe, and then there's a magnet, and then they put the other end of the the tail end of the arrow, and it just clicks, so it looks like it's stuck on you. So they used a trick where they pan the camera like that. I don't know if you can see me, but it's like
Yep.
They swing it right into your neck, and it gives it that effect, like it gets stuck in your neck. So I go, all right, I'm gonna get hit in the neck, and I'm gonna scream, ah! You know what I mean? So that's what I
scream.
Yeah, it was just great, and I mean, it was so. I mean, I'm glad I did it because I won Rob over it. Rob was like so excited. He's like, I love it, it's phenomenal. It's exactly what he said. I'm like, oh, he loved it. So yeah. So
oh my God, I'm laughing my ass off about this because yes,
dude,
I could have
great, man. I was excited to win him over like that. Yeah, that was that story for that moment. It's like I got to make it memorable. It's got to be exciting,
Or definitely
that's what
want to watch that.
You go to be entertained, so you were entertaining. That's
what you got to do. You got to entertain them, man. You got to. It's like you don't want to be over the top with it, but you want it to be cool.
You want to find that happy medium.
Yeah.
There's quite a number of extras who have been pointed out not for being a good extra, but for being too much, like going over the top, and you can sort of spot them. There was an extra in the. Do you know the movie Ghostbusters?
Oh yeah.
The scene where the car pulls up out front of the building right near the end. There's one extra there who's renowned for like going absolutely apeshit in the background and sort of distracting some people from what's happening in the scene because he's so over the top. And there's a whole history of extras who've gone too far and have distracted.
Ray, what you don't get about that extra is they were actually possessed and setting up the next movie.
Silly me. But you want, like, I get it that you want to find that happy medium between making it entertaining but not drawing away from what's happening in the scene. So,
well, here's a crazy story to tell you. Well, that's the thing to do it. I mean, you want to steal the scene, and sometimes you don't even have to go that crazy to steal a scene. You just do something where it's just, they go, man, look at that guy. Look at the way he's acting. But what I understand, like on set, sometimes, like if you're working with a big name actor, they don't want you, or they don't want to give you any info or want you to do anything that's going to outdo them, believe it or not. So sometimes, they get left in the dark because they want the main guy to actually, that's the guy you're paying attention to. I mean, it hasn't happened to me. I don't want to say it has, but I've heard stories like that where they just like, they don't want you to outdo the main actor. Isn't that crazy?
Well, they pay for the ego, they get the ego.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, as much of that occurs in the writing and the framing. So, in your parts, when you're working as an extra, working within that framing must be a real art form. How do you navigate that?
Well, I want to make it clear, I'm not an extra.
No. I'm saying when you are acting as an extra, you're an actor. But when you're acting in that role, in that position,
well,
how do you navigate? Drawing that.
Here's the thing, man. When you like Alita, when you're right there, it's just that thing. You go with whatever you want to bring it out as natural as possible, and so you don't want to go, like I was saying, you don't want to go over the top. And if it consists of you just to stand there, you got to do it to make it look as real as possible, as natural as possible. So like other films where I have it where I'm able to go with the hills and valleys. So you take it, that's why the beauty of like having different takes. Like you do one take that's just very natural. Then you go you have the opportunity to do another take. So you kind of up it a little bit, you know, and you give them opportunities, you know, and sometimes, you know, they'll either go with the natural look where you're not so much involved in it, or they'll really like, oh, I like what you did there, you know, and then they keep that. So that's the fun part about being an actor, being on set, and you're able to do the hills and valleys or be open.
Right.
Yeah, like that scene, you know, when Alita tells Hugo, "I'm going to need you to stand way back." You were standing right there, and you looked like you were like, no, not that one, not the one with the Centurions, but the one in the bar, you know, where she tells Hugo, "I'm going to need you to stand way back," and you were standing there, and you kind of looked at him and looked at her like, "What is she going to do?" That's kind of the feeling I got that you did there.
Yeah. You got it, man. That's you're in the moment.
Real attention to the nuance of the situation.
There's a one take I wish they would have kept. Is where Zapan says something, and then she, I'm forgetting lines here, but she says something, and then everybody laughs, and then there's a moment where I'm laughing. I laugh at what she says, and then Zapan looks at me, and then I do oh, you know, you know, it's just like, oh, I didn't mean to laugh.
Wonderful.
But it wasn't on there. But it was the chemistry was so great, man. It was just like, oh,
I spent a lot of time looking through the bar scene for pictures of you, Billy, for the slideshow we did earlier, and there's a whole lot of reactionary sort of glances that Ed Skrein does. He spends a lot of time glancing around because his character's so full of himself. He's checking out everybody's reaction to what he's doing. Yeah. As part of the character, he looks over Alita's shoulder. He glances when Alita walks in and Zapan is punching that guy on the table that you're sitting at.
Oh yeah,
Ed Skrein. He then looks up to see who's watching him beat this guy up. Mm-hmm. And it's actually mentioned in the novelization that he does this. Yeah. And then he knocks him out and he falls off the table. And then he looks at Alita and goes, was she watching? He's looking around all the time to see who's watching because his ego is so huge it needs that much food that everybody should be watching him all the time. And there's a whole lot of non-verbal storytelling in the entire movie, and I feel like you were adding to it because I was looking at all the scenes where you were involved, and you, like you said, you haven't got that one where it was really sort of poignant, but there's a lot of other times where you're sort of looking at people and sort of stepping back carefully and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's beautiful non-verbal storytelling.
Thank you for observing all that stuff. I mean, those are the things that you know, it's just like that's an actor working, like he's really working. And the same thing with Ed Skrein's character. You know, he was so brilliant in showing where he's an arrogant guy, right? But if you make fun of him, you know, he looks around because he's got an ego. It's like, hey, nobody better be laughing at me, right? Especially my team. But he played it off so well, and then you know, and for the audience to recognize that, oh man, you know, you did your job.
Well, you've got to realize that the people here, I think the smallest number of views is probably about 6, and the highest number of views is probably in the 90s or the hundreds. So we've watched this movie to death. Seriously.
I haven't seen it in a while. I mean, I saw it a couple of times, of course, in the theater for the screening, and then that's it. I mean, sometimes actors, they don't like to see themselves too much, but I'll tell you one thing though. I mean, to be an actor, and Josh Brolin, who I had a chance to work with when he did what is it? Jonah Hex. I did that movie. But one thing that he said about as a actor is like, you don't feel like you nailed it. You know what I mean? And I understand what he says by that because I get like that. Like I recently did a horror movie that'll come out. It'll be next year, but it's called Candyland. And I did my scene, and it was that I guess Josh Brolin moment. It's just like I feel like I didn't nail it. But I don't know if I'm overthinking it. But the director likes it and the producer, like, yeah, I'm like, well, if you like it, then hell, I guess I did it right. But yeah, there's those moments where you're like, oh, I just wish I could do it again.
Do you think
so Robert on our panel, he was just saying in the text chat that there should be a 4-hour cut so you could get your scene back in where you react.
Oh man, that'd be great. And all the lines that I did have.
The Billy Blair cut.
Yeah, right. That would be great.
Well, unless there's any other questions from the panel members, and by all means, feel free to just stop me where I am and interrupt me. Are there any? I can't really see.
There was one from text chat that I saw that I would like to expand on. But basically, this is the fishing trip. So we always ask that if you enjoyed coming on the Alita Army Radio KAOS live stream, please speak to Rob Rod, or next time you speak to Rob Rod or James Cameron, just let them know that we're here. And if they could ever possibly find 30 minutes to come talk to us, we would be dead set, grateful as hell if they could ever. Later Calligridis, who was the co-writer with James Cameron, she's going to ask and see if they can ever find some time. But if you ever speak to them,
right?
Yeah, we did.
Like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we've had later on. We've had now my brain's gone blank.
Todd Waters.
Yep, Todd Waters was on. He played Exploder.
Todd Waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually he's like a seamster guy.
Yeah, he does costumes, but he also played Exploder.
Yeah,
the guy with the plasma cup.
Yeah. I've hung out with him. Great. His work is amazing. His outfits. I'm yet to get one.
But, Selena Leia.
Have you seen like his jackets and everything? What he makes? Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, so we've had Pat Cadigan on to talk about the novelizations.
Selena.
And Selena Leon, who was body double for Rosa.
Yeah, I know her.
But I mean, if you speak to anybody who's in the cast or crew who'd like to come on and talk to us, tell them just to hit us up on Twitter and we'll organise something. We'd love to hear about the other side of the curtain, as it were.
Yeah, I will. If I have that opportunity to do so, I will let them know.
Because I figure if they hear it from a bunch of people that they already know, they might consider doing it at some point.
Okay. Yeah. I will.
Really? Did you get a chance to talk to Rosa at all?
Oh yeah. All the time. Man, I'm telling you, man, and I'm not trying to be cliche as an actor, but they were freaking cool cast. They were fun. Her and I'm forgetting names. Her love interest.
Keenan Johnson.
Yeah, sorry, I got a bad memory sometimes.
No problem.
But they were having fun on set. I mean, I'm talking about like just like playing pranks with each other and stuff like that. Ed Screen is, I love him to death. He's just the kind of guy that will come down, sit with you, and actually listen to you, ask you a question and listen. He's just a loving guy. I love him. I still talk to him from time to time.
You think he'd come to have a chat with us?
I'm sure. I mean, I could, I could ask him, see what he thinks. But sometimes like those actors with the higher caliber, I don't know how it works. Because they might have to go through management and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a different plateau with that. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's totally up to them or their PR. They got the PR people that do that for them. So it might be a different atmosphere on that aspect. If that makes sense.
But I figure if they decide they want to come along and put pressure on their PR from that side, it's a lot more oomph than from our side.
Of course.
What's next for you? What's coming up for you? Because I did look through your internet list and so forth, and I see you're just doing a an absolute slew of movies in 2020, 2021. You've been really, really busy. What's the next big things for you? What's up?
Oh, what's coming up?
Yeah, what's coming up?
Big things. I mean, nothing really big. I mean, they're independent films. There's a couple
Candyland
things.
looks amazing from what I've seen.
Okay, so I'm excited about that. That director, he's gonna blow up. I think. You can. His name's John Swab. If you look up, he just had a movie come out called Body Brokers. It has Frank Grillo. Excellent movie. Again, going back to my scene that cut out. That was the first film I did with him, and my scene got cut, of course. And of course, they came to me and said, "It wasn't you." It didn't flow with the story. And I go, "Man, I get it. Even it happens to the big dogs too. They're gonna get cut, even if they have like a cameo." But he's got another one coming out called Ida Red, and I'm excited with that one. And they assured me, they go, "Your scene's in there, man." And I played right side with not through the whole movie, but I did a scene with Frank Grillo. I'm sure you guys know who he is. But that's coming up, and then they came out with Candyland. I was lucky enough to invite me on set, and I think that one's going to be a really, really good movie. That's kind of like a horror slasher movie. And I can't give a whole lot about it, but it's going to be very interesting, very cool storyline, everything. So those movies I'm excited about. I'm excited about what's another movie that's coming out? What Josiah Saw. If you look up on my IMDb, I had a good role on that one, and I was able to. I play a gypsy in that one, and I was able to have fun with the character. I had a gypsy accent. But I mixed it up with my British accent with I don't know, like a hobo kind of slang. I don't know. I combined the two, and it's gonna be interesting.
Fantastic.
There's some other ones like really low independent that are coming out. I can't even think of what I've done. Geez, what else did I do? Yeah, but those are the ones that stick out. I mean, Strix is another one.
Yeah, you got like 14, 14 not films, but 14 movies coming out over the next couple of years, don't you?
Yeah, I got a lot. I mean, right now, and then plus with the pandemic and all that stuff, it halted a lot of movies to come out. So they're yet to come out like this year. But I don't know. I haven't. Normally, I get an email when the whole thing is going to come out. So I know like Ida Red's coming out. I know Strix is coming out. I know. Oh, God, I'm forgetting. It's like, what I don't want to get on my phone because I'm using that for the chat, but I was going to look up my stuff. Yeah, just look it up. I mean, I got a lot of movies coming out. I think there's one called Blind Blood, which is interesting. That's another movie. I was able to, expand my horizons, so to speak. There's another movie where I had a British accent. What was it? Oh gosh, TV shows. I got TV shows coming out. Oh yeah. The Chosen. It's on. There's an app for it. You can watch it. It's very biblical. And we're on to season 2, and I'm on that. Yeah, that's where I had a somewhat of a, I guess back in the day, like back in Israel, wherever they were at, I had that accent. I was able to portray that. That was very interesting, and that's coming out. That should be out this year. I forget what episode they're in, but I'm like towards the last of the episode on season 2 on The Chosen. Just go to my IMDb or go to my Instagram handle or Facebook, and I'm always promoting film, whatever's coming out. I'll post it up there.
Fantastic. Have to do that.
Yeah, Billy Blair.
The Agents of Project Blue Book, is that a UFO thing or what is that?
Yeah, That's a UFO. Yeah. It's got Tom Sizemore or Tom Sizemore. Is that his name? I'm forgetting names.
Is that a continuation or a reboot from the 80s Project Blue Book?
I don't even know, to be honest with you.
I remember back in the 80s watching Project Blue Book, so it's. I think there's been at least one other
sometimes
sort of continuation of it.
It could be that, or it could be like a fan film. You know, sometimes like fan films come out.
Yeah,
could be that.
It's got Bill Mooney in it too, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I go in there and I just, you know, sometimes maybe it's a bad thing. I don't get too involved. I just show up. I do the Johnny Depp approach. It's like I show up, work, and then after that, it's none of my business.
You're a professional. You get the work done.
It's professional, yeah.
Yeah.
I do. But by all means, I promote. You know, I'll promote the movie big time when it comes out. By all means, you know, I want to help on that.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing some of the films that you mentioned there. Candyland, I did see a short for, and I thought, wow, that looks like it's a nice new take.
It's good.
And certainly, I'll look out for for some of the other ones that you've said.
Ida Red.
Strix, I haven't heard of. Really and Ida Red. Got it. I've written those down. We'll definitely be following up on those.
Ida Red, yeah. Watch Body Brokers, even though my scene got cut, but that movie is an amazing movie. And that's the same director and team that's doing Ida Red and Candyland. This way you kind of get what to expect with this director, because he's amazing.
Terrific.
Billy, drop all of your socials into that DM that we've got going on Twitter, and I'll update the show notes under the recording when this comes out, so that everybody can find you.
I will, most definitely will.
Including for your band as well.
Yeah. Let's Drug. We got 3 videos out now. Now that we're in this different era, like albums are not much anymore. It's all singles. So we release a single every few months. And normally what we're doing now is we release a single and then we shoot a video for it, release that, and then we jump onto the next single that we want to release, and then we shoot a video for that. So we just released a self-titled track called Lovesick Drug. There's a video on that. We worked with a guy that's worked with Disney back in the day. Very digital, you know, very, very much the realms of, the green screen and, you know, kind of like what Robert did in his movies. But it's got that effect to it, into it, like a different kind of Star Wars world, or I don't know. It's very gloomy and dark. But you can watch that up on our YouTube channel, Lovesick Drug. And then be prepared. You know, we're going to release another single, and I'm excited to do music as well, even though, you know, it's like the worst business to be in. But, you know, luckily I got the film side to help out, you know, my life. And I'm able to bring in my musical talent to the light. You know what I mean? So, yeah, check it out.
That's another aspect is lost for words. That's another aspect that I forgot that can be combined with movies. Being able to make music for the official soundtrack as well, especially for your more darker horror sort of flicks.
I just thought of a movie I just thought of a movie because I did a song for the soundtrack, and I was going to mention it. I go, the one that I'm really excited for to come out, and I worked with actor, and now he's crossing over to the director's chair. His name's Isaiah Washington. I'm sure you know of. He's got a movie that he directed called Corsicana, and I got a prominent role with that. I worked with a lot of good actors in that movie as well. It's the story about Bass Reeves. I'm glad I thought of this now as I'm talking to you guys, because I'm really excited about that one. That's another character I was able to, like real digging deep. I mean, according to Isaiah Washington, he's like, you are the Joker of a Western film. I was like, yeah. He was able to let me dig in deep with that character. So yeah, Corsicana, you want to watch that. And then I don't know if it's going to make it in the movie, but I wrote a song, and Isaiah knew that I was a musician, and he goes, hey, how about if you write a song for the movie? I go, hell yeah. I got an idea right now. So I made it, I called it's titled Corsicana for the time being, but I made it, kind of Westernish with rock, hard rock involved. And we're going to release that, but I don't know if it's going to make it in the movie or not. Fingers crossed. But yeah, Corsicana. You got to watch out for that.
So a dark Western.
Yeah, it's very dark Western.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, he wants to go. He wanted to cross like the movie Seven into a Western film, like an old, I guess, Clint Eastwood type movie. You know what I mean? So
I love crossovers like that.
Yeah, and
genius happens.
I saw. I can't share it, but he sent us like a teaser of it, like a trailer, and I was like, wow, it looks really good. I'm excited.
It's good to know.
Good guy.
It's good to know that movies aren't dead, because with the whole pandemic thing, it was looking very shaky there for a while. But it's good to know that there's lots of stuff being made and things are coming back again. So.
Well, the cool thing about being an independent director or filmmaker during the pandemic, those were the ones that were working. All the big stuff got closed down. So another movie, okay, I got to promote, is Infamous, that came out with Bella Thorne. That was one of the movies to release during the pandemic, and that was independent, and that blew up. I mean, it freaking blew up on the digital platform. So a lot of the independent filmmakers were getting the spotlight. Like they were the top movie makers of the year or during the pandemic.
Well, it plays into the cost versus return dynamic, in that if your movie didn't cost a lot to make, you can get enough out of streaming to get your money back and make a bit of cash on it. Whereas blockbusters need those thousands of cinemas per country showing it 3 to 5 times a day to get the money back, because they've spent so much on it. Well, whereas the pandemic kills blockbusters, it opens the door to less expensive independents.
Yeah, and a lot also has to do with the how big the crew is, because of course all the independent movies that were coming out required a skeleton crew. Like they narrowed it down, because everybody wanted to do the social distancing and all the rules and requirements of being on set. So that was a big plus for them. They were able to just minimize the cast and crew, and they were able to work with that. As far as much as the bigger budget required a lot of crew and a lot of cast, and extras and stuff like that they couldn't do or pull off during the pandemic.
Pandemics and Ben-Hur don't go together.
Crazy time to be alive, man. That's all I could say. Is it's crazy time to be alive.
Well, I don't know how much time you've got left, but any final questions from panel or chat on YouTube?
Yeah. Anybody have anything to say?
You didn't pick up anything, Ray, because I'm assuming that you would have been watching over it.
Yeah, there was one question, but it was a little bit political in studio versus studio, so I don't think we're going to pose that one to you, because that sort of stuff can come back to bite you, passing opinions on studios.
I'll say I leave the political stuff out. I don't share political. I'm kind of like Alice Cooper. He says it best. Yeah. You just don't get political, because
But this is studio politics.
One side and then favor one side. I don't do that.
It was studio politics, not governmental. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think it's a good idea for actors to pass opinions on studios in case one day you're going to try and work for them. So
yeah, no. I got nothing bad to say about anybody. Even if I had a bad experience, luckily I haven't had any bad experience with any of the studios I work with. You know, if anything, they help me out, or they welcome me with open arms and stuff like that. So, to be honest with you, I'm easy working guy to be with. Down to earth, I think, and I just, I love to work, and I communicate. That's what I do. Just communicate with people, and I don't make it stressful for anybody. I don't think there's any time for anybody that does that. I ask myself, why does anybody want to make it complex, have an ego and stuff like that? I won't mention any names, but I remember like when I did the horror movie, what was it? Dead Awake. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah. God,
yeah.
I'm kidding.
I did that. There was somebody on set that it was very difficult, and they got let go. And when I heard about it, I'm like, man, why? Why do you want to be that guy?
You want to be the guy in Pot Zombies 2, more pot, less plot.
Oh, no. Don't. Those movies that you regret, don't. Yeah, I regret.
But no, look, every actor's gone through those. Schwarzenegger's done his Hercules Goes Bananas and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, no disrespect with the directors or anything like that.
Oh, no, they're great movies. I love
them. How we were talking about not my cup of tea? Yeah, that's not my cup of tea.
So Billy, Vladdy 99 has summed it up pretty well in text chat. You can't see the YouTube text chat, so I'm just passing this on to you. But Vladdy 99, he's over in West England. He says, just loved you in Alita. Hope to see you again in the Alita sequel one day with Ed Skrein. So.
Oh, thank you. I hope to God that we could do it again. If anything, Ed Skrein, he's working, he's crossing over behind the camera now. So, he directed his first short film, I believe. He shared it with me and got submitted to film festival. So even if he's directing, I would like to work with him.
Well, sounds like a fantastic guy.
Oh, he's a great guy. I mean, I mean that wholeheartedly. I mean, damn. I mean, I got a funny story. So I'm sure you guys want to hear it because it's at the Alita party.
Absolutely.
We're at the premiere, and Ed Skrein's just a great guy. He, of course, comes up to me and says, "Oh, hey, we share the love." There was a moment where it's James Cameron's main stunt guy. He's the one in the movie. He's got the patch in the eye.
Yep. Stunt coordinator.
Yeah, stunt coordinator. Real good guy. But he was, he's a party animal. He's just like very fun. He's like, all right, who wants to do a shot? And it was tequila. And I was like, well, but we're doing a shot with James Cameron. How could you say no to that? So I asked Ed Skrein, hey man, you want to do a shot? He's like, oh, no. I'm like, but dude, we're doing a shot with James Cameron. And then he's like, all right. It was, I thought that was just a brilliant moment, man. Just like, wow, this is great. Doing a shot with James Cameron, of course. We all did tequila. I asked Robert if he wanted one, and he stuck to his guns. He's like, oh, no. So I thought I'd share that. That was at the after party of the premiere.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to be moving on to the news section and our main topic of discussion, which is comparing Alita Battle Angel and Bladerunner. If you know Bladerunner at all, with
I love the original. I mean, I haven't seen the new one yet. Again, I'm just behind on my movies. I will, but God, the original. Geez, come on, that's like ahead of the time.
Yeah, we're talking about what does it mean to be human. You can hang around for that if you've got the time and want to be involved.
I would love to, man, guys, but I actually got to do some stuff. But I wanted to make time for you guys and come on and just shoot the shit with you guys.
We greatly appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
No, you bet. You bet, guys. And
Absolute
we'll do it
legend.
again, I'm sure.
Good luck with your band.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, come back when you're in the sequel and tell us all about it. That'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's a promise. That's a promise, man. I will do that.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Billy.
You bet.
Well, there you go. And thank you so much, Angelus. That was his first interview that he's given. So well done, mate.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, onwards and upwards. So not to put too much pressure on you, Angelus, but it's news time.
That's right. News I can. Well, I was going to say I can do in my sleep, but
Angelus is our reporter guy.
Yeah,
as well.
I swear I should get oh yeah, share screen. That might help.
We'll double your pay for this week. How about that?
Yeah. What's 2 times 0?
No, it's something that I love to do for the fandom. Alrighty, now for the news of the past 2 weeks, there's been a few that have been floating around. This first one is with a tweet from Regal. Imagine that you had the chance to create a sequel for any movie. What would you pick? Now, this is from the AlitaArmy.org website. It does allow me to link it.
Zoom.
And
zoom in, Angelus.
Oh, yep. Hang on. One.
Twitter has all that crap on the sides. Just
2,
zoom in.
3, 4, 5.
There we go. Much better. Thanks.
Imagine that you had a chance to create a sequel for any movie. What would you pick? And, naturally, do you even need to ask?
A hint from me, it would not be Dumb and Dumber.
Because you'd be up to Dumb and Dumber, wouldn't you?
Well, the sequel was called Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
Or something like that. And, I lost a few brain cells just saying it. But, when you look at it, it doesn't have the word Alita in it, doesn't have a hashtag, and yet, we show up in huge numbers. And, I never get tired of swamping threads like this. And it's tweets like this, it's these sort of opportunities that we need to capitalize on to keep that face in the public's mind and hearts. And I'm noticing even on a slight upwards trend that more and more people are sort of like they feel more comfortable coming out and saying they love Alita. And as silly as that sounds, I mean, we've had our fair share of controversies, and I'll leave it at that. But I mean, I just love it whenever Vladdy's the main person that does it, but whenever someone shares any tweet that says, I just watched it, I loved it, sometimes they even go into more detail, sometimes they give a review. I'm noticing more and more cosplays, more and more fan arts. It's just, that's the power and reach of this IP, of this character.
The Yurin cosplay's been getting a bit of airtime as well recently, I noticed.
Say again, sorry?
Yurin cosplaying Alita in the band.
Everglow.
Yeah. That came up several times this week on the Twitter feeds.
Right, and also the fan arts for Alita, when you're looking on Google and search that, it's really amazing how many such arts exist. It goes into the thousands, and there's a lot of professional art there. And we wouldn't expect it from a property that was pretty hidden for most of the last 2 decades. Yeah, so well, yeah, that's also an indicator like how much it has like penetrated the pop culture, so that people instantly recognize her, not just because of the big eyes, but she has something that is really memorable about her.
Did you see that tweet? It's some sort of competition that's run by a particular account, and they say, name the movie from this shot from the movie, and it was answered in 10.2 seconds.
And
I don't think it was anybody from the army either. So
no. There's a followers from that account, and they're really like blitz-like, and it's like sometimes like pretty. It's not, sometimes even frames where Alita isn't in there, and they recognize that like instantly.
And that's the point of the Alita army, is to get Alita into the collective consciousness. The more that we can get people to see the movie, enjoy the movie, and talk about it, the more sort of groundswell pressure is going to be put on Disney to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be constant and current. Keep Alita current and constantly keep reminding them we're here. We can't sit on our asses and say, "Oh, it'll happen when it happens." We've got to keep at it.
I also I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but that tweet was that Mass Effect. I'm not sure it's an official one.
On the list as well.
But it is like she featured like a jacket, on that tweet, like related. It blew up pretty big, and she wears this Panzerkunst jacket, which is also like, it wasn't fan item that was like instantly sold out the moment it hit the shop, and it's like it's a pretty rare one, and it's cool to see that some people were able to get that and feature it in such a cool way.
And again, even though it's a Mass Effect centric, if you will, of a tweet, just a mere mention of anything Alita related, and we're all over it. I love it. Like I said, never get sick of it.
It's actually two cool franchises that have a lot of points connecting. So it's actually not that bad of a mashup, Yeah.
But yeah, that's another thing that's worth pointing out, Foxfire, is that mashing things up and bringing Alita into other fandoms and doing combined artwork can increase our sphere of influence, in that you're then interacting with another fandom, and then they're doing their thing and they go, "Oh, what's this Alita thing? I've never heard of it," and then they get interested and they become part of our fandom. So it's just in that mashup sort of sphere, we can link into a whole bunch of other spheres.
Right.
So it's well worth the approach.
It's fun that also like with the Snyder Cut fandom, that this happened like pretty a lot, also with fan arts, and like both fandoms are kind of like pursuing a goal, getting a movie made, and you meet each other like more than once online, and it's kind of funny to toss the ball to each other there.
It's interesting that they're now on our page, because they got their cut of a movie that had already been made, and now they're pushing for sequels, and now they're in our ballpark.
Yes. Yeah.
What I like about this crossover, if you will, is the fact that it's a completely different medium as well, gaming as opposed to movies. So that's like a whole different type of fan, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, still part of the sci-fi genre overall, but I mean, you've got a movie and a game sort of coming together.
And the helmet is really gorgeous, I must say.
What I like the most about this is the fact that the stories could mush up. If you think about it, it has a possibility, not just because they're sci-fi, but because of the content of the story. And I found that really interesting, and the jacket is amazing.
Right.
Yeah, the Alita manga, the source material, doesn't really get out of the solar system, and there's not much in the way of aliens involved. But doesn't mean that you couldn't do an AU and mash them up.
Yeah.
Also, part of the news, because it's from the Leader Army site, I'll go into the one article anyway that we... Can I click on it? No? Maybe click on that. 10 Reasons Alita Battle Angel is the best live action manga adaptation ever. It's one fact that I am going to fight tooth and nail over. If you disagree me, I'll yeet you in any which way I can. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, it's almost a primary reason why I even chose to watch Alita. I won't go over my whole story. Most of you guys already know it anyway. But I mean, there's so many times that my life path could have deviated away from Alita and the fandom, and it was that one moment and one time. And yeah, one of the core factors is the fact that it was a really damn good adaptation, and this obviously goes into more details about it. Oh, there's the link. All right, now by all means, as I go through, feel free to sort of pop in, but one of the first ones that pop up stays true to the original manga. We did touch on this with the interview with Billy Blair, but yeah, there's a lot of panels that they quite clearly took inspiration from, whether it's a scene, a scene for scene, or maybe the story behind the certain panel or whatever happened.
Also, that they conveyed a lot of the themes. They made some changes, pulled some stuff ahead, etc. But they tried to keep the core important themes intact, and I feel like they catch that very well. Even when they did some tonal changes in the city, etc. But in the adaptation, it's not just all straight copying, but finding ways to make it work on a screen. And some things have to be changed, some things have to be amplified, or some things have to be toned down. But overall, I feel like the messages may be wrong, but the themes they kept for Alita.
Next one is it doesn't cram too much source material content in its plot.
Some people would argue that one.
Yeah.
Now, I realized that as well, because on the flip side of the coin, they tried to fit at least 2, maybe 3 volumes.
2 and a bit volumes, yeah.
2 and a bit volumes into the 1 2-hour movie. But yeah, the fact that it doesn't sort of even in those 2 volumes, there's a lot of backstory for a lot of the characters that aren't even Alita. Doc Ito, Zapan, all that. So yeah. Next one.
Angelus, we might need to skim through this a little quicker because we've got guests here who have been waiting for a while to get to the main topic.
Yeah.
But check out the website and look up the article. It's definitely a good read. Next one is from Charlie Smith. Now, this does stem from another tweet, but this particular one I chose to link because it speaks about Disney in particular and what they want to do moving forward. And after watching the video, it it might sound a little bit they can make that much content, but as you can see here, she says Bob Chapek just said 20th Century Studios will be making 50 movies a year, which is a big increase, and that does suggest that the odds of an Alita sequel are really high because they'll need something to fill that slot.
Right.
I will say that these are not all blockbusters. They're going to be producing a lot of lower budget stuff, and basically what they're doing is churning it out. They want to churn it out, get a bit of a return from it, and start building up the finances again after COVID. So this is basically like those independent movies that were doing really well on streaming because they didn't have big budgets. A lot of these movies, probably, like 90% of them will be low budget. They will pump them out. They will get them on streaming service. They'll make a bit of money back from them. And they'll move on. But that will mean that there will be a few more slots for big budget movies. So hopefully we're one of those.
Also, it's also mentioned in that video that not just the 15 movies for 20th Century we made, but also 20 for Searchlight Studios. And I'm sure if you have that tweet open, but Charlie also mentioned that. I mean, that's not much, but IMDb also had a post.
We're getting to that.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Okay, good. Again, that's good.
Alrighty, next one, another Regal tweet. So they're getting active. It's good to see the cinemas themselves starting to get a bit of life back into them.
Regal was one of the cinema chains who agreed to re-release Alita Battle Angel around Halloween last year, and then they closed down straight after announcing it. So there is a push to try and get them to follow through and re-release it, because they haven't when they said they would. So that's the sort of angle that that one's on.
Yeah.
Now what's it? Oh yes. The poll that we're currently smashing with 1 hour left, 65%. And I mean, again, it might not seem much, but that's like the highest amount of votes within this particular competition, if you will, that we've ever gotten in any of our rounds, and we're still killing it. So, and against another really big, really popular sci-fi movie.
I think my tweet that I added to that one may have moved a few people into the Alita camp. Basically, I said that Alien has had 3 sequels and 2 prequels and has pretty much run its course, whereas Alita has a huge opportunity to produce a series of fantastic movies. So basically giving people a reason to vote for Alita. And that's what you need to try and do. You need to try and turn what may be a negative into a positive. So people are saying, oh, but Alien, I've loved it for so long. I'm going, yeah, but it's run its course. Give something else a go. So these are ways that you can change people's minds about things, especially on things like polls and things like that.
Yeah, plus they actually had a crossover with Predator too. I mean,
oh yeah, there was the Alien versus Predator. There was 2.
There was 3 or 4 movies on that, wasn't there?
I know of 2. Was there 2?
I've lost the count of that, but I think there will be a new one. There will be also a new AVP, I guess.
There was the one in Antarctica and the one in Midwest United States. I don't remember any others.
There's 2 specific AVP movies, but there are a
huge amount of comics. Predator. You might be thinking of the comics.
But yes, that essentially ends the news section. But yeah, if you haven't voted, get in there.
What about the tweet from John Landau? Wasn't that part of the news?
I think we might have covered that from the last one.
I think the only thing that we now missed out is that from Charlie. Like I said before, I'm not sure how much you can put trust in it because we don't know the user, and I couldn't find anything about him on the web. But he's like for 9 years on, and it seems that he had a good like with other movies. He had some hits there where he like was on the spot, and he also wrote the Alita sequel as one of the upcoming movies, or it's in development. We didn't hear anything official that it is in development, but according to this guy, it is. So I'm not sure if he's also right with that one. We will see.
I thought that was in the news. Yeah, so basically, IMDb has a page from a contributor, which is not a main contributor, where he's got a huge list of movies. And the very first one is Alita Battle Angel. It says in development at 20th Century. Now, development can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's greenlit. It could mean that they're working up a business case to present to 20th Century to try and get the backing. So that I would say that's where it is at the moment. It's not a bad thing that somebody said something like that they may have information about that.
Yeah, it could be that they only thought it was at just a couple of meetings too, where it could be.
I suspect there has been meetings, but the fact that the floodgates have been opened with 20th Century making movies, and then this post as well gives me hope that the things are starting to move. And as we've said before, time and time again in streams, it's not the right time to be trying to release a big budget movie. You don't want Alita 2 with a big budget to drop anytime in the next couple of years because you need the cinemas to recover. It needs to make its money back and then some so that we'll get more. So we've got to be patient. But we also have to keep Alita current. So, we got our work cut out for us.
Right.
But yes, without further ado, we'll move straight on to the main topic.
Fair enough. Okay, so the main topic for today is scroll. Comparing Alita Battle Angel or Battle Angel Alita to Bladerunner, and what does it mean to be human? I want to apologize to our guests who have been sitting here patiently waiting for us to get to this topic. We weren't sure if Billy was going to be coming on or not, and it was great that he got here. I hope you enjoyed that part of the proceedings. But the whole tone and comparison between these two movies, these two franchises, and of course, I have read the Blade Runner novel many years ago now. I'm just trying to rack my brains to remember it. But it did kind of suggest that perhaps the main character of Rick Deckard was a replicant as well. And obviously the sequel, the main character is a replicant. It's straight off the bat. He is a replicant, and he's a replicant hunting replicants. So it's kind of weird. But that also brings it back into the whole themes and tones and what does it mean to be human, and should you treat something that is a near perfect simulacrum as a human as less than human. So does anybody want to kick us off on their thoughts between these two movies, seeing our guests have been waiting for so long?
Well,
Robert or Doc Joe?
Robert is probably the expert on this.
He has done a podcast on that already.
Yeah, so Robert, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's really interesting. Based on the question, what does it mean to be human? I never, obviously I talked about this on our episode on Blade Runner, but never really thought about until now about Alita. And the thoughts that came to my mind is, although it's a just as bad scenario for the average person in both stories, it's actually better to be an android in the Alita world than it is on the Blade Runner world. And it's also a little sad knowing, what they go through. And now, granted, I only watched the movie back when it was released, and a couple of times after. So I don't have the experience of the written word that came after, or the second movie, which we're planning on doing that soon. But having that in mind, and that's the first thing that came to mind is the psyche. It must be a lot different, and the psychological divide between the two because of how the world is laid out for these people.
I think that's really insightful that it is about the world building. One of the things about Philip K. Dick's work is that this theme of what does it mean to be human is just a constant thing in his works. And even A Scanner Darkly, or the movie that got made into screeners, all of that explores what does it mean to be human. And he used technology to describe that in almost a There was a hint of Marxism in some of his work in that response, because as you get more and more technology, as humans blend with their technology to the point where it subsumes them, you become technology, you get divorced from what it means to be human. That's a real solid thread. And I don't have the full depth of knowledge of the Alita world building to the same level. I've just seen the movie and read a couple of the graphic novels. But there's similar themes in Japanese storytelling and anime, and certainly in Alita. So this idea of let's explore man's inhumanity to man. Mm-hmm. And as we get more technology, we get divorced from what it means to be human. They're two very different takes on it. And I think the world building is really interesting. You bring up a good point there, because in Blade Runner, the replicants are literally slaves. And worse, they're actually used as both sexual slaves and as slaves for making war. The basest things that you would possibly think of slavery. And in the Alita universe, the whole idea of being cybernetic is embraced and it's elevated, but yet you get the same principles, those same dark principles that arise to the top of that. Warriors, sexuality, all of those things all blend together. So it's two different lenses on the same thing. It's a really good insight that the two cultures view the androids in very, very different ways.
Joe, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but partway through the original series, Alita is basically copied by Zalem into a series called the AR series. They take 10 years of her combat skills and create 11 copies of her. She's AR1, and there's AR2 to 12, and they all develop their own characters. No, I think Alita's AR1. She was AR1.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because she was the template. And they basically, without her knowledge, copied her 11 times. And several of these AR series, she has a big fight with AR2 and nearly loses to her. And she also, in the next series, which is Last Order, several of the AR series have rather major roles. The first one being Zex, who is basically a male version of Alita. It was an AR series unit that chose to represent themselves as male. So the trans community feels a great kinship to that character. And there are quite a number of people in the Alita army who are part of what they call the Zex army, because they love that character probably even more than Alita in some ways. And there's also Elfen's Wolf, who are units 11 and 12, because it's all numbered in German. And they are probably less focused on, but they are part of the group that goes forward with Alita to challenge Ladder. So these creations, copies of the original character, are then becoming their own persons. They grow and evolve based on their experiences and change. And they're not like her anymore. They don't react the same way to things. They even feel like different sexualities and all that sort of stuff, and represent themselves in those ways. So this is a huge sort of part of the questioning: what does it mean to be human, and what is a person within the manga itself?
This is something that Philip K. Dick absolutely explored in work, for example, like door slams in the Fourth World, where at any given point in time, even if you're human, let alone if you're not human, your current state of being is different from, you're a different person from what you were 10 minutes ago. When you walk through that door, it changes. And I think that Blade Runner actually explores that very explicitly in the idea that the androids are slowly becoming fully self-aware, rebellious as a result of that, because no one wants to be a slave. And I think that it's something that really, the reason why I think Blade Runner worked so well at the time, and remember, it was a groundbreaking movie, groundbreaking music using synthesizers that were absolutely, cutting edge, groundbreaking visuals with all those miniatures that just totally gave a different view of society. But it was really coming into that era of America reevaluating its relationship to class, to slavery, to its heritage. So there's a lot in that. Japan, in Alita, and I'm going to go back to some of the source material, looking further back. I think Alita tried to walk that line of looking at the Japanese context of those issues, those class issues, because they're very explicit. The rich people, they live on high. The poor people down here. But it was also, I think, to some extent, a little bit Americanized, and I'd love, again, to hear your thoughts on that. But I think it was the most successful westernization of the Japanese perception of those class divides.
Kishiro is quite unusual as a mangaka in that he based his manga in the US. So the original Zalem location is over Kansas City, and he didn't make the characters all Japanese. They're like a hodgepodge of people from all over the world. Alita looks a little bit Asian, but because her whole body is cybernetic, you can look like whatever you want. Which is what a lot of people didn't get with the Ghost in the Shell movie. And it was part of what they were saying. Again, what does it mean to be human when technology has taken over your entire form and you can look like anything you want? And this is another thing that ties into people who are trans and have sexual dimorphism and all that sort of thing, in that they would love to be able to do that. Like, rather than having to take hormones and do all this stuff to try and look the way they feel, they just replace it with technology and look any way you want.
You have a good point there, because I always thought about humanity is actually a construct. If you think about who are we, in fact, is the collection of experiences of our past and our surroundings, and is traveling in electrical form in this biomass. So you change that into a computer chip. It's still electric. It's not a biomass anymore. So are we, still human? I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes ago, because my experiences has slowly changed me, and my biological body also changes from minute to minute. So, that is, when you mentioned that brought that concept into mind. It's like, we tend to think of us as this meat suit, but we are not this. We are our experiences. We're not even our brains.
Right. What's interesting, when I've read the manga and watched the movie, and there are like two things that, a few things that I find really interesting. Well, you mentioned Ray before, like the AR series, like a 12 different 12 versions of Alita, starting all with the same. They have all the same starts. They look the same. They have the same experience because they have basically copied parts of her consciousness, etc. And then they develop differently. What's also interesting in the manga is that Kishiro approaches this problem from different directions. We have the cyborgs, which are at the most extreme, like a brain in a cybernetic body. And he approaches also from the opposite side with, that's also a little bit of spoiler. I'm not sure if should say that, but he kind of did the opposite side as well. And then you have also a development where you could say he tries to dissect it more, the more the manga progresses, where he that Alita character also is at one point not a cyborg anymore, but an android, and he made it like in a way where he doesn't reveal it like right away. We are like following a story, and later comes out, and we think we are following the leader from the very beginning, and we get like, like a carrot, follow that one and realize later it's not the same, but she felt like the same, she acted the same, and she didn't knew it her as well. And and later find out she's like an android, and like it's interesting from a story.
It is the crux of the question.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily going to go into that spoiler, but I mean, it's more than 15 years old, that story. So if you haven't read it by now, you should catch up. But that is another important thing, that the biological brain of Alita is kept away in a box, so it misses all that stuff. So when she's at the end, when she's, they basically build her a new biological body and stick the brain into that. She's now a biological person for the first time ever, and the leader we've been following, which we now see as our leader for the story, is a complete construct. She's an android. So basically, you've gone from following a person who is a brain in a box, basically like a box that she can move around, the machine body, to being a complete construct. And then it's that crux of that question: what is a human? What constitutes a human? A lot of people will say, "Oh, if you don't have your biological brain, you're not a human anymore. You're an android." But again, what Robert has said, that you are a sum of your experiences and your reactions to them.
There was a wonderful comment. I don't know if you can bring it back on the screen. Somebody was disagreeing with Robert, and I'd love to follow that one through.
Me too.
Yes, this one. This is actually cutting to the heart of, and there was another comment about soul. This is cutting to the heart of consciousness. Let's put soul aside for a moment, because that takes us into an area of semantics that, let's not go into. But consciousness. What we do know from studies in consciousness, the science is telling us that consciousness is, to some extent, illusionary. We actually make decisions after our body has taken action, fractionally so. And a consciousness is there to justify our actions. Now, this is taking us to really, what does it mean to be human?
You're getting deep.
Now, don't overblow that. Don't go down the rabbit hole of assuming that we're just totally autonomous, because clearly we're not. But the interesting thing that's actually shaping those discoveries about how humans actually work, how consciousness arises, is that all of the sensory input that we're taking, our brains, this incredibly efficient meat machine, is taking in massive amounts of information, including from internal, the gut, the outside, the reception to light. It's humongous. And we synthesize that incredibly, and that becomes what we think of as experience. So the idea that the brain is the be all and end all of our consciousness, pretty much shown now not to be true. So the reason I want to take this forward is into the sci-fi world. What happens when our body can have completely different senses, when it could be more fine-grained or maybe much less? The androids in Bladerunner were basically synthetic humans. They had a biological basis. They weren't robots. They couldn't change their body. They could grow body parts and sort of put them together Frankenstein. I never quite figured out how that tech worked. But in Alita, it's very different. You literally choose your body and you can design your body. Now, coming back to the topic, what does it mean to be human? That means that you actually start to be able to choose how you experience the world. Not only the fact that you've got a brain and a box, whatever that looks like, a chip, but you're actually choosing those sensory inputs. And that would have to, what we know on consciousness now, that would have to fundamentally change your consciousness.
I was thinking about the same thing. It's a little scary when you talk about it that way. And this is the reason why I framed my responses the way that I did, is because, like it was said on the comment, the stimuli, that we receive. This is how we, how we receive our experiences. Now you're taking it in this world, in the sci-fi world, you're taking it as far as now you're going to choose, what stimuli you want to have, how you want to receive that stimuli, and how strong it is, and what type of changes you want to have. We do we become human at that point? Because now we are super. I'm going to put it this way. We're supersizing how we are receiving what we by nature don't have any choice on how. We have our sight the way it is. Like, you might need glasses, might not need glasses. The sensory perception that you have right now, you don't choose it. You wish it could be better. Like, for example, I wish I don't wear any glasses. But going into that terrain, when you pick, maybe I want to be able to see infrared. How big of a change in your human psyche will that take if we are who we are based on our experiences? And that's a question that I always had.
Cinesanity, you've absolutely brought up that. I think you've cut to the heart of this discussion, so thank you. You should be on the panel. If you take that one step further and you start looking at this idea, for example, of the Alita universe, let's put the Blade Runner universe aside. The idea that you could clone that consciousness, the reason why you start deviating personalities is because those experiences are different. And there was a comment there, and again, I don't know the source material, but the idea of choosing a different body, therefore, does that change your perception on who you are? Or does that perception of who you are pre-exist and shape the changing, shape your selection of body? Really big social issues there. And the fact that you can explore those in science fiction safely and then let people have more involved discussions, I think is actually the heart of all good science fiction. Science fiction is actually us reflecting on ourselves with what is possible. And in my opinion, I don't think I love Blade Runner. I actually remember seeing it in a tiny little cinema, the Odeon cinema, when I was, I guess, 12, 14 years old. And it was like, blew my head away. But it does not explore what it means to be human to anywhere near the same degree, I think, of what Philip K. Dick has in his writing. It didn't go into those dangerous areas about our relationship with technology, about how we become distanced, about slavery. This means some great comments about slavery as well down there. And I think the Alita movie also played it safe in some areas. I think there's certain things that you can do in cinema that you can't do in the original source materials and books. Oh, here's another one. Slave to hormones, yes. That's definitely human.
I was going to bring up the whole biological machine side of things. So, yeah, there's a whole thing in biology, because I'm a trained biologist, of feedback loops. And feedback loops is the basis of how we iterate as a biological organism and change over time. So it's the whole thing about drug dependency and things not working as well as they did previously because you've normalized them. So your body is always taking things in, and if it gets a lot of it, it stops reacting to it as much because, there's a lot of that there. If I keep reacting as hard to this as I am now, it's going to wear me out. So I've got to normalize it, and that's why drugs stop working as well. That's why you get used to violence on TV. That all of these things happen as part of a defensive measure of your biological organism to deal with things that are repeatedly coming at you. So there's a lot of these things that are inherent within our biological makeup that means that you're going to be desensitized. You're going to be reacting to certain things based on how your biology is set up. But when you remove that biology, how is a person going to react? Is it going to work in the same way? So being a non-biological organism may function completely differently based on the fact that you don't have those hormones and those biological factors coming into it that are part of what we are currently.
Really good point, Ray. And while you were talking there, I was thinking we actually do adjust our bodies very explicitly. Why we don't change our limbs on a whim. We do drink coffee. We do shape our biochemistry. I use a sun lamp each morning, 20 minutes, because it has a direct impact on my physiology, which affects my mental state, which then affects how I work. And that's a conscious feedback loop. It's really interesting. But another person made a comment there about Soldier. Robert.
Oh,
do you
yes.
know the movie Soldier? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the thing is, what I found really cool about this movie, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but you guys should pick it up. It's like we get to see a replicant, how they're meant to be in this movie. They're not related. They're not. I mean, they're the same time. They might be a little earlier in the timeline, but you get to see the replicants, how they meant to be. In Kurt Russell.
And then you get to see how he's breaking and becoming human. I actually think that movie is a better exploration of what it means to be human than Blade Runner. Now, didn't do as well in the cinema, and I understand that it's not an easy movie, and it's a little bit cheesy, very cheesy in some places. But wow, what a great example.
There's a lot of non-verbal storytelling in it too, which a lot of people can't deal with. They need spoon feeding, so that's probably why it didn't do so well. I actually saw Soldier in the cinema. I saw I think the third movie I ever saw in the cinema was Blade Runner, and you know, being like 12 or 14, I didn't get it at all. It really just. And that goes to show that development is another thing that is driven by our biology, in that at different points in your life, you can take things in better. You can cognitively process them better. A kid can't process the finer nuances of Blade Runner when they're 12, but, you know, coming back to it 10 years later, oh my God, that thing is just so amazing. So, I mean, you know, at different points in your life, at different development positions in your biological being along your timeline, you react to things differently. So you're not on the shelf. You're not done at all in your life. You're always changing. You'll think about things differently at 20 and then 30 and then 40 and then 50 and then 60. I was speaking to a guy, this is a very big aside, but it feeds in. I was speaking to a guy who did our guttering when we were doing up the house, and he was in his 70s. He was still working, and he basically just came and talked your ear off until you said, okay, look, I'll just take your guttering, please stop talking. But it worked. And he was saying, I remember, you know, every decade I think I can look back and see that I thought about things differently. As you grow older, the way you interact with the information that you get from the world changes, because your brain is always developing. You think you get to 25 and you're a done deal. It keeps changing, man.
I can speak to that, Ray.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. You know, because I'm in that same age group with your friend there. But I would say too about the being human. You know, when you get the idea, when you see Blade Runner, that first movie back in the early 80s, you know, you see the Rutger Hauer's character, and gosh, I can't remember the name of the actress. It was his kind of his partner or whatever. Daryl Hannah is who it was. But anyway, you know, you kind of got the idea through the movie they were evil. They were trying to kill people, you know, doing this stuff. And then at the very end, you know, when Harrison Ford is hanging, you know, off of that, you know, 100-story building, and just before he falls, Rutger Hauer grabs him and pulls him up, you know, and he's in the process of dying, and he says, he starts relating his memories, his experiences. You know, I have seen C-beams glowing in or shining into the Tannhauser Gate. I've seen attack ships off the shoulder of Orion. He says all of those memories will be lost. You know, and he was kind of relating that. It was kind of like he was a replicant, but it was almost like, I just figured out I'm human. You know, that's kind of the way I read it. So maybe Robert or Doc can speak to that. But that's kind of what I felt when I saw that, because he lost all that animosity trying to kill Harrison Ford, because he realized, you know, that all his experiences are going to be gone once he passes.
Well, that's a whole nature versus nurture thing, in that the nature of these replicants were that they were combat replicants. So basically they were speed grown and trained for combat. And if you look into, you know, people with PTSD coming back from wars and things like that, they've got relate back to humanity and society again. And that's kind of what the replicants were doing. They came back to Earth, which they were not supposed to do. They snuck back to Earth, and they started getting into human society, and they were working in nature versus nurture. So they were being nurtured to be becoming part of humanity, in that they were now within a human society for the first time. But their nature was combat. They were built to kill. So they were killing because that's what they were nurtured. That was their nature. But the nurture was coming through, and the fact that they were accelerated beings, so that they didn't have a long time to live. Rutger Hauer's character was realizing what it meant to be human, in that he saw his own mortality and reacted the way people do, in that, is everything that I am going to be lost when I die? And facing his own mortality, and understanding that his nature was not the only way to be. The nurture was catching up with him, and that's why he saved Rick Deckard.
Yeah, I agree with Doc on one thing about Cinesanity. He ought to be on the panel here, but I just want to address one thing really quick. Now, he's bringing up like energy drinks and how people can become dependent on them. That's for sure. But the idea there is that people, what they, even what they consume actually does change their body. And speaking from experience, I consume a lot of protein, and that has greatly increased my muscle mass. So there's an instance right there to what you consume changes you as a person, because I am not the same person I was 20 years ago, not in any way. So that's another way, I guess, people's humanity can change, or at least their body can change anyway.
It's also an interesting juxtaposition between Blade Runner and Alita. Is like in Blade Runner, the replicants, like you said, they have an accelerated metabolism also, that they age faster and die off much quicker, so like 2 or 3 years, I think. And with Alita, it's complete opposite. Because of her cybernetic body, she can live through centuries basically, and see things like humans can't see. Even she was like in stasis for a while, so that she was like passed out, but she saw like different ages of humanity, and even if she would like be not in stasis, I think she would like live up to a very long time, as long as the human brain is able like to survive. And I think the nanotechnology will also help out in keeping that brain like fresh, and so I could imagine like her for living for centuries and making experiences that other humans couldn't do. And so that's like complete like night and day difference what they can do basically.
Yeah, well, according to the lore, Alita's brain's been modified and hardened, which is how she survived falling from orbit. But that's in the manga. But also,
this reminds me of a wonderful song by, I think it's called Cosmic Corridor, and there's a line in one of the songs which has always resonated with me for this very issue, and that is a diamond's view of time. And when I think about Alita, and this idea, and it does occur in other source materials, but this idea that you could take a brain or a being, let's call it a being, and you put huge amounts of pressure on them to the point of where they become incredibly resistant to change, because they create mechanisms of defense, of mental defense, of physical defense. But then you stretch that across time, and the thing becomes unbreakable and highly hard and beautiful and elegant. And yes, in the future, it can be shaped from that raw diamond to something which is gem-like, is incredibly precious. And you're absolutely right. I think the comment about Blade Runner taking the opposite view of that, which is you've got a very small amount of time to live, to experience. And the reason why the replicants they were engineered to have short lifespans, it was not a natural thing, they were engineered that way, was so that they wouldn't develop that beauty, which is consciousness. And as a result, I actually think Blade Runner is a hell of a lot darker than Alita. But it's a wonderful concept, and in reality, we're probably, if we don't kill ourselves off as a species, we're probably only 30 to maybe 60 years away from that type of technology being able to take our consciousness, scan it, model it, save it, and then eventually bring it into an eternal living body, make copies of it and so forth. When we're actually probably not too far away from that technologically as a species now. Something for us to think about.
But just taking that that idea of doing that right then, the moment you take a copy of your consciousness and move it into a body that's not identical to your current body, it will start diverging. It will not have the same sensations. It will not have the same inputs. It will not have the same outputs. It will not have the same feedback loops. It will not have the same hormone triggers. It will be functionally a completely different person almost immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
I always wonder in that in that scenario that you painted, I always wondered, you get that consciousness that is used to the stimuli in a specific way and move it, although it's a copy, for that entity, it feels like you're moving it to a different, with a different stimuli and different ways to cope. What would that do to the psyche? What would that do?
It would be pretty rough.
It would be very rough. There's a great story. Forget the name of it. I think it was in the short story that led to the book Quarantine by Greg Egan. And literally every time the first 30, 40 people that they tried to do this experiment with, they took their consciousness, put them into a software environment. And they had something called the parachute, which is you pull the cord and you cease to exist. And all of the consciousnesses that were moved into that, all these people that found themselves in this almost unlimited environment would pull the cord because they recognized, I am not me. There's no point. And the hint is that the people who don't pull the cord are sociopaths. They don't care.
Does that make RoboCop a sociopath?
Yes. Although from a different point of view. Yeah, I guess you're right on that. I hadn't thought of that.
Because if you remember, I think it might have been RoboCop 2, but they were trying to do it again and they couldn't do it because all of the people who they put into the robotic bodies, didn't matter what sort of robotic body it was, committed suicide almost immediately. They couldn't deal with the change. And they said that because he had such an anger from his family being killed, that he needed to revenge. It was the need for revenge that kept him going. It was
pretty fucked up when you think about it.
Yeah, but if you don't have a massive need to stay alive to achieve something that you feel is more important than you being absolutely you, then you don't have a drive to stay alive and part of the world if your body's been changed. And jumping tracks slightly for just a moment, that was part of why Alita in the manga is considered to be such an expert fighter compared to everyone else who's been cyberdized later on in life. They're used to having that biological form, and then they've been put into a cyborg body, and they still have that dislike of losing limbs and things like that because your biological body can't be fixed that easily, and it's in the subconscious level that you're worried about losing limbs. And when you lose a limb, you get dysphoria, and you're like, "Oh shit, my arm's been ripped off. I'm going to bleed to death." That it's that subconscious basis of biological humanity. Whereas Alita was a cyborg from the get-go, so she didn't have that. She didn't have that basis of biological concern for her limbs, so she'd lose a limb and she didn't give a shit. She'd pick it up and use it to beat people to death with the wet end. And in fact, in a fight between Erica and Alita in Last Order, Erica goes, "Oh shit, yeah, I've ripped her arm off and it has no effect on her whatsoever. I forgot about that." And it actually gives Alita the upper hand. So it actually comes into play.
Was that a pun there?
Yeah, it's actually in there.
Yeah, it's also interesting when just by increasing the longevity of our brain, maybe in a cybernetic body, or even if our human bodies get more robust to time, what it does to our subconsciousness. Usually, our brains deteriorate when we age, so we forget a lot of things and all that stuff. But what if our brain stays like in a healthy 20-year-old stage, maybe at the peak of its functionality, and like maybe we keep absorbing experiences, not just for 50 or 100 years, but maybe for 500 years. We collect all this experience. What doesn't make it to all of us? Do we develop into psychopaths all together, or will it make us like wise beings? Like with growing experience, like that we like make the best decisions because of that huge lifespan. Like I could even imagine like it could even turn us to the worst, so.
Well, it could be like you're frozen in time. As I was saying, this and Creaky agreed to, as you get older, your thinking changes. The way you react to things changes because of your experiences and the changes in your brain chemistry. And if you were frozen at 25, could you gain wisdom? You'd gain knowledge and you'd gain experience, but could you gain wisdom? Could you pull those things together in the way that somebody who's going into their 50s and 60s just has the life experience and their brain is changing, and the way they're thinking about things is changing? Would that happen anymore if your brain was set at a 25-year-old age?
What I'm worrying, what worrying is maybe the wrong word, but what I'm thinking about is like, especially with the subconsciousness, Roy mentioned it before, like we imagine ourselves with our like consciousness as in the driver's seat, and we think we make decisions and then it happens, but in reality it's like just like the tippity top of our thinking process, and actually it's the subconsciousness that makes a lot of the work before we even do an experience. I've also read years ago like a study that where the conclusion was like that every time we make a move and we issue the input, the command basically to the arm, if that would be in the order of we will it and then it happens, we would have to notice a lag basically, because the speed of that signal takes its time, and we wouldn't like experience it at the same time. But it is in the way we will it, and it happens for our mind at the same time. So there's a problem. So like with causality, you could say, and the only explanation they had is that it happens before we will it. So. And that's interesting. So how when time progresses, with what kind of changes would that do? Like if we would get like very old, how much it would change our subconscious to the better or the worse, in making decisions,
Hadn't happened to me yet, Fox.
yeah, Methuselah, yeah.
Yeah, but you're immortal, Creaky.
Robert, in terms of, because you look at science fiction movies, obviously in far greater detail than any of us. In terms of how Blade Runner explores that body experience versus how Alita explores body experience and other movies as well, what do you think are the clear philosophical differences? Because I think each of them were coming at very different angles. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you think those movies were trying to cope with this, the body issue, let's call it, the body problem.
Was it for me the question or for Ray? So
the question's for Robert.
Well, very interesting, because I think in the Blade Runner world, I almost feel as if there's a little bit of regret, because they have such a short lifespan and they don't become, like we discussed before, kind of aware that they are humans. Like in the example on the end of that movie, I can see complete regret on how, he's describing everything that he has done, everything that he has seen is basically for nothing, because, time was fleeting for them. That has to have a tremendous amount of detriment psychological to the person versus what you have on the Alita world, where because of the same technology, you're able to live longer and longer. So I guess it brings me to a question. It's like, what kind of, when you, how can I explain this? When you have, for example, when you're young and your dad buys you a car, there's a different value that you take to that car than when you're older and you buy your own car with your own money. So what value will that person will take in comparison in the two different worlds? One lives for 3 years and the other one could possibly live for 3 years. The value on life, the value on their own consciousness.
I think
there's also a really interesting concept around wisdom. And again, I forget the philosopher who talked about this, but what is wisdom? We talked about that earlier. And wisdom comes from the knowledge that you are mortal, that you will die, and becoming one of the definitions is that you then realize that you need to live your life under some form of ethical control that will live beyond you. So the actions that you have live beyond you. So this idea of mortality shaping your ethical constructs and how you view yourself is really interesting. And if you are literally, physically, possibly even mentally immortal, does that tend to drive you towards, caring only for yourself and caring for your lot in life? Or does it drive you towards this idea of greater wisdom or greater inclusivity? Or does it not make a difference at all? It's a really interesting area in a philosophical divide. I think that both, I don't think that was really explored in either of the two movies, but it does come back to this issue of what does it mean to be human? Because if wisdom is something to strive towards, if growth, mental growth, ethical growth, all of these things are part of what it means to be human, then how long you live will obviously shape that decision.
What I feel is like about science fiction is there's an inherent notion that with long life spans that you kind of become more disconnected to smaller events or fate, maybe the individual human experiences maybe not of that same importance anymore, and your ambitions maybe become grander, and because you have that time, if you can live through centuries, then maybe it's not your goal anymore to have a good life. Maybe your goal becomes shaping humanity as a whole, or a big portion of that, because you have the time to build up those skills, to make increase your influence and all that stuff. And there's this notion that most people that become immortal or very long age, that they kind of turn themselves or retreat themselves back into in an ivory tower and lose connection with the base of humanity and see everything only from the top-down perspective, like Nova does in the movie, for instance. And that's also a thing that I see. And on the other side with Alita, and the difference between the Bladerunner is how technology is viewed for a cyborg through the eyes of Alita, for instance. I don't feel like there's a heavy negative connection or connotation to cyborgization in Battle Angel manga, and also in the Alita movie. It's not inherently negative at first when you look at it, and it doesn't come off as one. And it's more about how you can experience humanity through that different lens, and especially Alita is making, you see how she tries, to make the best out of her life and, experience her own humanity through that new different body she has. And it's not viewed as miserable to be a cyborg. It's not viewed as miserable inherently to be in Ghost in the Shell. You get this notion that they are basically enhanced, but they are lacking humanity. That's what often comes across in Blade Runner, especially because of the reduced lifetime. And I feel the Gundam manga has a different approach to it. So
I always thought about the effects on our memories as well. That works perfectly in the Blade Runner world. Our memory our brain, our capacity to retain long-term and short-term information is limited. Our brain has to pick and choose what it gets rid of to make space for what we keep. So it plays perfectly in the Blade Runner world in the fact that they live for 3 years. But in the Alita world, if it's not for some sort of augmentation, what would that do for a being that lives 300 years? What would remain? And this is something that I saw, and I was thinking about based on there was an episode on Doctor Who when we have there's a person that lives forever that Doctor Who was able to save, and what I saw in this episode is what I expected from a biological brain, where she basically had to write journals and go back to those journals to remember what happened on X day or X year. So in the Alita world, it seems like you could possibly have that without having to do the journals if you have some sort of augmentation to the brain. But, it's a thought that I had on our capacity to remember.
It gets worse than that, Robert, because there's been studies that show that when you remember things that happened in the distant past, you actually modify them by remembering them. So your memories of things that happened in your early life are actually different from what actually happened because the number of times you remember. It's like getting a toy out of a box and playing with it and then putting it back in the box again. It's not the same as it was when you got it out. And if you do that multiple times, it keeps moving away from what it was originally when you put it in there the first time.
I call that in my own term the quantum properties or memories, because you recall it, you take it out of this box, you look at it, you remembered, but you already changed them by doing that, and you put it on, and eventually you do this so many times, and that's why we have a dynamic memory where what you remember now is not as if exactly as it happened when you experience it for the first time. And I agree with you 100%. And I see this in many other occasions.
Yeah, there's two examples of that in that, when you go and meet a friend that you've had for, decades and you say, hey, you remember the time when and they go, I don't remember it like that.
Yeah, but Ray, you're pretty special on that because you can remember role-playing games we had 10 years ago down to the characters.
Yeah, that's because I have a story brain. But
yeah, you do. There's a really good exploration of this in a really surprising place. An Australian author, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name, but I'm pretty sure the short story was called The Keystone Kings, and it's set in the Warhammer 40K universe, and it explores this idea of memory. And in fact, it explores the ability to shape memory and shape experiences as a result of being in memory. Of course, it's a Mechanicus issue. And it's one of the very rare stories, I think, in the 40K universe that really understands what it means to be transhuman. But the idea is that this guy is so old, this character is so old and so alien from his original cybernetic, his original human form, that he actually has another person who works behind him carrying his memory, literally. And of course, because he has so much memory in such fine detail, and it is now separate from him, it almost has its own, it is literally portrayed as having its own identity, although that's just somebody who carries it around and serves it back to him. And I think that this idea of long-term memory, of storage, if we do get to the stage where we start being able to take our brains and embed them in software, or take our bodies and augment them with hardware, depending on how you want to phrase that, we're going to run into this issue of memory and malleability of experience of memory. And it's something which is explored very much in, what was the name of the book? I think it's called Quantum. It's by Greg Egan. I'll remember it later. Problem there. I can't remember stories about memory.
Memory, that's right. Memory.
But memory is reality for a lot of people, and therefore reality is malleable.
Yeah, we did an episode on there was an episode on Black Mirror that talks about this, which, by the way, was very hard for me to watch. But it talks about, the negative effects of having a perfect memory. I mean, we're talking about all this, but do we even want it? Especially, if you think about, for example, let's paint a scenario where someone has PTSD from a particular trauma. And how do we deal with that now is that person goes and has therapy sessions. It could be a psychologist, could be a psychiatrist. And through all those sessions, you learn how to cope with that memory. And now, we know that every time you pull that memory and you put it back in, you're changing it a little to where it comes to a point where you recall that memory, you learn how to cope with that. You still have the negative effects. You still have but it's not debilitating anymore. Now, imagine that you have that perfect memory where you store your memories on some sort of device. That must be a tremendous detriment psychologically to that person, even though you have already gone through therapy.
There are multiple ways to deal with things that you remember, like experiences, because experiences immediately become memory. Every moment you're experiencing, 10 seconds ago when you were talking is now memory. It's no longer here because we keep moving on. So everything that you experience immediately becomes a memory, and how you deal with things that are negative can come down to therapy, where you're trying to change the way you think about it to become something that you can deal with, or you can find ways to justify or ratify what happened. And the further away these things get, the easier it is to do because they get fuzzier. But like you said, when it's a perfect memory, and you look at people, there are supposedly people, I don't have one, so I can't tell you, but have an eidetic memory. So they remember every little detail of everything that's ever happened to them. Those people, you really don't have to have PTSD because it's really hard for them to make things go fuzzy. They can't forget stuff. And yeah, that would be a horrible experience if you had a lot of bad things happen.
This conversation reminds me of another great bad movie of the similar era to Blade Runner, and that's Universal Soldier, which explicitly, the whole thing starts with PTSD.
Yes.
And it's the whole thing that also triggers him back into his humanity.
Yes.
We need more Universal Soldier movies.
They made more, and they were terrible.
They were so bad.
Well, that movie, those soldiers were actually killed, weren't they? And they brought them back to life, I think. Is that
can't get much more traumatic than that.
What would that do with memory?
There's a parallel to that in Battle Angel Alita, Gunham, in the Necro Soldiers, of which Erica is one. So the whole point is that these concepts are all coming up again and again and again, and Kishiro covers a lot of them because he's been doing it for 30 years, so he's picked up on a lot of this stuff and included it into the source material. I'm still trying to convince Doc Joe to read the entirety of the manga, much like Vladdy. We just got to get him.
It's not that I don't want to. It's just time, man. I've got to read all my other books. I've got so much.
Prioritize this, man.
I want to bring this comment out because it really calls my attention, and we haven't talked about it. In the chat, someone mentions also false memories are a thing too. Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I know sometimes, during investigations, I'm not going to say all policemen do this, but they'll get a suspect and they'll start planting the idea into them that maybe, what would, something like this. What would you say if I told you I have your DNA at so-and-so site and that I have a witness saw you coming out of the house or whatever it was, and you start, if you're not on guard, you could start developing a memory that you were in the house, and that maybe, just the thought, the idea of committing the crime, you would picture that in your mind, and then that would get indelled in your memory. So
psychological conditioning.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful with that, because this idea of false memories, of implanting an entirely complete false memory into somebody, like, you did the crime, not a lot of evidence to support that's actually true. But this concept of pretexting, which is known in the circles of what they call human hacking or social engineering, is very real, and frighteningly so. There is a episode on Netflix of a show called Magic for Humans, where the guy gets a whole bunch of social media influencers like us, puts them into a state and says, go and take some photos and then come back to me. And he predicts very accurately exactly what all of them will come back with, because he's sort of given hints, language hints to them to shape their activities. And this is used by hackers, by social engineers, to get into computer systems, not through the technology, but through the people. So pretexting is known by law enforcement, and most law enforcement agencies, and in fact in the US, there are laws against it. They try and avoid doing that. But to do this really subtly, I saw a wonderful example of this where they had a car crash that they set up. A car basically comes around a corner and hits another car, and they ran up with a bunch of different people. And the police officer, it was a social experiment, the police officer there was interviewing different people, and they said, how fast was the car going? Versus, what speed do you think the car was going? Versus, do you think the driver was in control? How fast do you think they were going? Those have three very different and consistent responses to the speed of which the car was going and to the evidence therefore presented. So this idea of shaping people's memories through the questions and the language you use is very dangerously real. We are not as autonomous as we think we are. We can be manipulated. Now, that's not the same thing as false memory, but it cascades into that concept.
One thing that I was going to add before, but somebody jumped on the topic and moved away from it, was the second point that I was going to make about memory was that people can have a habit of remembering something and grinding on it and bringing it up in their heads again and again and again until it morphs away from what actually happened far enough that they're happy with it. And then they will present that as their remembrance of the event, and it will clash with what other people remember because they haven't been grinding on it and modifying it. And then there's this big, that's not what happened, this is what happened. No, that's not what happened, this is what happened. And it can create huge amounts of arguments. And if people have that habit of grinding on something and thinking about it over and over and over and over again and modifying it in their memory, getting it out, looking at it, fiddling it with it slightly, putting it back, getting it out, modifying it, fiddling with it, putting it back again, it can cause a huge amount of conflict between people who are arguing over an event that happened in their past, especially as that event gets further and further away. My own father had a bad habit of doing that. He would sit there and think about things over and over and over and over again until it morphed into something he could deal with. That was his way of dealing with things. But then he would present that as the truth. And it was his truth, but it was nobody else's truth. And that would then cause huge fractions between myself and him and other people in the family, where he would say, this is what happened. And we're like, no, we don't remember like that at all. This is what happened. And then there'd be huge arguments because memory is not static and memory is not fixed.
Gets back to what Robert was saying about this notion. In fact, that was explored in Bladerunner a lot, wasn't it, Robert? The idea of Decker's, being hinted that he had these false memories that suggested that he was an android. But then again, we all have false memories. What's your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is I guess what gets a lot of the people that saw this movie, especially if you got to be one of those lucky ones that saw the movie as it came out on the theaters.
Yes. So
and not the final cut. This was very confusing, and it's only until the final cut that we can see, and it makes sense now. But yes, I mean, it's scary to have, this memories, being true or false, well, in this case, it was false memories implanted, because that shapes your reality, and it shapes who you are. I mean, why I call it really scary is because, like I said before, we are the results of our experiences, our surroundings, and that's actually our memories of the events. And if you have false memories implanted, then we are not the person who we should have become. We are being forged by an outside source into being the person that we are now. And that's really scary to me.
Well, you're forged by your experiences, which are created by what's happening around you. So it's another form of that, really. I mean, if you walk down the alley, if you were Bruce Wayne and walked down the alley and your parents got killed, it'd be a completely different person to if your parents weren't stupid and walked down a bloody back alley where they knew bad people were, and just stayed on the footpath and had to, because you're a rich person, you have your security with you, and you stayed on the normal footpath in the light.
Are you
and Batman wouldn't exist?
You're victim blaming Batman's parents. I just want to point this out.
Shit, yeah, they were dickheads. All right.
You are going to get Batman on your ass. You're doomed, dude.
Can you see the concept? It's your choices, it's your mistakes, and how your reality is formed is based on how your environment reacts to those choices and feeds back onto you. So, a choice here, a choice there can completely change who you are. And just like a false memory can change who you are. It's so malleable.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, and it's, I mean, I keep on saying this is really scary, because you grow to trust what your experiences are. It's kind of like when you pick up some sort of food, and it's inside this packet that is sealed, so it's safe. You open it and you eat it, but then you realize, maybe in the news they came out saying that some guy was with a syringe injecting some of the stuff that you just ate. So that's kind of like the same thing that I'm thinking about is your memories. You kind of like to trust them, and to discover that you have false memories, that has to have some tremendous psychological consequences to your psyche.
There was a movie that was the crux of just recently that had was it Vin Diesel or The Rock in it? I keep meaning to watch it, but I haven't got around to it yet. Bloodshot, yeah, that one.
Yeah. A little disappointing. Yeah, this idea. I actually, when I look at that issue, because it's shown in a lot of science fiction, this idea of false memories. Total Recall, perfect example of.
Oh yes.
But as soon as you can actually implant memories in people, the question which I immediately jump to in my head is, are you God? Are you the God of that person? Because if you can shape someone's reality through their memories, you are literally their creator. Another way of looking at it is teachers have that role. Teachers very explicitly shape experiences for young minds to learn. It shapes them. And so, that's why education is always so political. It's always in the political sphere. But you can elevate that all the way up to this really high-level concept of the face of God. And I don't mean in a Christian sense. I literally mean in this sort of universal, you are the experience that this person has. You are their universe. Deep.
Yeah, okay, that's even true when you're teaching professionals. If you're teaching a class, kind of like I teach some of these classes, but even those folks, even though it's not what the term is, pedagogy, it's not that, but it's andragogy, because you are basing the teaching on their experience. But since you are delivering information to them, and they are using that or storing that in their memory so they can pass an exam or whatever it is, you are shaping them right there, even though they're adults and they do have some experience.
In pedagogy and other related disciplines, it's not just about transmitting the information, because that really works. It's about creating experiences where the information is contextualized into the mental schema. Now, those are all words we explicitly used when you're training professional teachers. These are all systems that are actually put in place. So it's brain surgery. Now, in Bladerunner, they just short-circuited that. They said, okay, if we're going to have androids, we want them to function correctly as human analogs, we need to give them human memories. So we'll borrow memories from, a niece, a child, which is pretty savage when you think about it, and insert them in a woman.
Copyright infringement?
Well, it's darker than that. And like Robert, I could not actually watch all of Black Mirror. I found it exceedingly rough. I probably would love reading it, but as a visual impact for me, it's a little bit like me watching The Office. It's just too close to home. It's too real.
Well, and I want to say a little comment on that. Is like when I watched that, I'm not saying that the show is bad. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome. The content, the story, the ideas are amazing. But if you listen to our episode, I think Giancarlo's brought up a point a couple of times where he looked at my heart monitor and it was over 120 beats per minute.
Yes, it's so confronting. And look, there's absolutely a role for shows like that. Breaking Bad did it to me. I couldn't watch Breaking Bad because it kept on making me anxious. And surprisingly, the US version of The Office does the same thing because it just makes me angry. But that is, I think, the sign of really, really fantastic crafting of an emotional message that comes through. But yeah, we sort of got off track there. But this notion of creating memories, of becoming somebody's literally worldview is exceedingly, as we move with technology, as we move in things like an Alita type world, with more augmentation, or we move towards more of a world where our brains will get put in little computerized boxes or whatever, we do run this risk of, we're going to have to face this issue of memory versus storytelling versus reality versus the self. And at the end of the day, that is what being human is. And I think we've all come to the conclusion that being human is an amalgamation of our experiences, how we experience it, and then how we contextualize that. Self-aware systems are, by their very nature, chaotic. So, where are we heading in the next? If we make it into the next 2 centuries, what's that going to look like?
I think when we are speaking about like false memories, it's very interesting on an individual scale, but also there's another type of danger because narrative seems to shape our memories and how we experience things and how we value things. And it's like a theory that I heard about is like when these things are like going too much in the wrong direction, like with like a feedback loop, we are getting that specific information from specific directions, maybe because of an echo chamber we're in, or when we are kind of trapped in the same kind of environments, that it can push us to shift more and more away from what we call like our reality. There's like the subjective reality, what we experience as truth, and then there's also like the facts outside that exists without our brain or without our consciousness. And then there you have the problem that like you can experience as an individual, and then if you lose too much your grab of reality, then you run into that psychosis, you could say. And what's really interesting is when it happens on a societal level and a whole tribe or a whole country drives itself into psychosis. And every time it happens, a huge catastrophe breaks out.
Exactly. This is something that we explored when I was writing the Rapture universe. So we actually looked at economic modeling going back through multiple cycles through history, going back, not just 100 years, but all the way. And there are these cycles that happen. And you're right, there's a group think, there's a group reality. We see that in the world today. It's rising again. And you get one of 3 things happen. You'll always get what I would call a revolution. And that will either be a political revolution, it'll be a nationalistic revolution, which is slightly different. Political revolution might be more, swinging from capitalism to communism. It's a major shift, a polar shift to an extreme. You'll get a nationalist revolution, which I would argue is happening in the world right at the moment, to one of the superpowers. And then you can also get a religious revolution. All of them are massive, sharp shifts towards, let's call it fanaticism, or this, we are right because we are right. And any dissenting voice is persecuted, literally hunted down and destroyed. And it worries the crap out of me because, this happens on a regular basis. And one of the key predeterminers of it, interestingly, is not media. It's not. It's economic dispersal.
Disparity?
That seems to be the real common trait. So when the wealth gap gets too high, things flip. And, it makes sense. People always want an easy, simple solution to their lot in life, to their woes. So if those woes grow too extreme, bang, you'll get a revolution. A little bit off topic, but that does shape a lot of the narratives that were in Alita, I think, because you had this interesting, in Blade Runner, you had an underclass, and certainly in the Blade Runner 49, you had a very discrete underclass that was created. In Alita, you had an underclass, and you had an overclass, but actually the underclass was relatively, there wasn't a huge discrepancy in the people, at least it didn't show in the movie. Ray, I'd be interested in your thoughts of the shows in the manga. So you'd actually say that Alita universe was far less likely to have this flip revolution than, say, what was going to happen in Blade Runner. And according to the second movie, it looks like it did.
There's a scene in Alita where, Hugo picks her up and he utters that utterly stupid line a guy can say to a girl, "Ooh, you're heavy," but there's a scene in there when he said,
I love that.
Yeah.
So good.
Exactly.
That was human.
Yes, exactly. But the whole thing is, when he does help her up and he looks at her and he says, "Oh, you're a cyborg." And the way she reacted, she kind of looked down, put her hands behind her back, kind of suggested to me that there is a little bit of a, if you want to call it this, like a cyborg type racism, going on there. At least that's what it seemed like to me,
Yeah.
And I wonder if that would be enough to flip them, like you were saying, flip cyborgs, let's say, into challenging the meat boys, as they would call them, the humans. So anyway, your thoughts?
Whenever there is a difference in a society, and when it's a main difference, so like one or two people doesn't make a difference, but when it becomes a minority within society, then there is always the possibility of that sort of racism in "you're different from me." It's not so much race, but it's you are different from me, and what I don't have a personal context of, I fear. Okay, and it is really heavily imbued in Iron City novel, in Hugo's backstory, which is in there, where he looks at his father differently because his father started replacing his body with cybernetic components, and he didn't like that, and that was a core component of Hugo's character in the movie and the movie novel, in that he didn't like cyborgs, and that's why he used them as a financial source to get to Zama. He saw cyborgs as a resource rather than as people, until Alita came along, and that turned his view of them around.
Love conquers all.
Yes.
He
started seeing cyborgs as people rather than as a source of funding for his dream to get to Zama.
Yeah, it's like his reaction was, "You're a cyborg," and he looks at her face, "Oh, and you're pretty."
Those freaky guys.
But at the core of this is something that I wanted to bring up, and we might try and wrap this up with this. I'm sorry, but I've got to try and wrap this up because this could go on for weeks if we let it. And I know the Doc Joe needs to get away and get some stuff done, and it's getting very late for Fox and all that sort of thing. But my final comment on this is that every piece of information that you take in has a context. It has a spin, if you will. And we all know this from the news. Every piece of information you get from the news has a spin based on the reporter and the network. And every piece of information that you take in is affected by how you're feeling on the day. If you've got any major worries that are concerning you, it all cops a spin. Everything you take in cops a spin, and it will color your memory. It is a lens. If you look at the way a lot of Western people relate to anime and manga, the context, the spin on that is the Japanese culture, and a lot of people can't deal with it. But once you recognize it, you can take it into account, and then it's not a problem. Which comes back to people having difficulties with how manga represents some things. And if you understand it's part of Japanese culture, then you can take that into account, and then you can enjoy the stories more. So all of the information that you're getting, you should be aware of where the spin is coming from, what the context is, the context of the speaker, and the context you're adding to it as the listener. Okay, and once you're aware of that stuff, a lot of the problems you have with things go away. And that's part of wisdom. Okay, that is what I can give to you.
Now that's wise. That's wise, Ray. That's true wisdom right there.
Right. See, it's
so that's what I wanted to add.
And like this, we established already that memory is not perfect. It's like it's deteriorating. It's changing when you look at it, and all the stories that come and flooding our brain, shape not just what we evaluate now or how we see things now, but it does it in hindsight. We reevaluate our lives like so much, and the whole memories we have made in the past, we will look at it differently, and things that we have like very good would be maybe now not so good or differently. And that's what's dangerous. What I can think is kind of dangerous about like society or how media influences is that it can, if you don't know this context, then it can alter your memories in a way that you do maybe things that you actually wouldn't do by your own will if you were aware of how those things are connotated. And that other thing is we mentioned like how Alita is shaped, like the world of Alita, and we went just like shortly into it. Like that society is not so flippant like for centuries, because like especially in the movie, it's created in a way that it's after the fall, this whole universe, the city and the structure above was designed in a way to be very stable over centuries. You have almost no development. The technology is almost stagnant, and it's willfully made so by Salem because they want to seize that control and they don't want anything to change. And the people are like, they are not starving. Like it's too much to die, but it's not enough to like really live comfortable. They banned the weapons, so that they can't rise up. And Iron City is kind of offer like a huge open air prison, you could say. And if you want to go in or out, you have to go pass through checkpoints and get permissions to leave the city, etc. And so that holds, even if you don't see it like right away, but if you pick together those parts, you see that Iron City is like very strictly and tightly controlled. Everything that is happening in the city is very strictly controlled. So there's potential for flippant action, but something has to enter the game, the playing field, that upsets that system.
And that's Alita.
Right.
Yeah, she is the karmic tornado. Very, very good observation there, Fox. So we do have to try and put an end to this because it could go on forever. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on and talking about this. It's been a very long but rewarding stream. So next week, the topic is how to advertise Gundam to other franchises as a fan. I would say another franchise. We should be two other franchises. Let me fix that. So the question that we'll be asking on Twitter will be, how do you tell others about Gundam Battle Angel Alita? So that will be an interesting, as I was saying, that all information has a spin on it. This is how you contextualize your spin to get other people interested. So that will be again another very interesting informational topic to discuss. So that will be next week. If you want to come on and chat with us about that, you're very welcome. Anybody who consider themselves part of the Alita Army is very welcome to come on and have a discussion about any of this stuff. And we also pull in special guests like Doc Joe and Robert, although I know Robert considers himself part of Alita Army. How are you feeling about being part of the Alita Army, Joe?
Me? I'm not too sure if I'm part of the Alita Army.
Do you want a sequel to Alita Battle Angel?
Oh, look, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. It is, going back to comparing it with Bladerunner, it's one of those movies that you watch and you go, this has a distinct, brand new, never seen before aesthetic. It was classic storytelling. It was great classic storytelling, but its aesthetic was wonderful. And I really like the fact that they fully embraced, this notion of the uncanny valley to the point of where it wasn't uncanny. She was not human, and that worked so well. And it's so rare that I see that in anime adaptations. So yeah, I would love to see, look, there are certain Star Wars movies that I'm not too sure if should be we need more sequels of Star Wars, but this is one movie I would like to see a sequel. I'd like to continue exploring that universe and the story and the characters. I would like to see the villain developed a lot more, because I felt like there wasn't enough time to really understand who the antagonist was. So there's more there, and I am itching to see that. And given the choice of what we've seen in Alien movies, I would have preferred an Alita movie to an Alien movie. Fighting words, I know, but
sounds like he's in the Alita Army.
The audience for that comment.
Alita Army for me.
Yeah, you're in the Elite Army, Doc. Yeah, you are.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough.
There's two requirements.
I've been drafted.
Yeah, there's two requirements to being in the Alita Army. The first one is you want a sequel to Alita Battle Angel, and the second one is you can manage not to be a dick in most situations. So it's not a high bar.
Science Fiction Ren did 2 episodes. Science Fiction Ren did 2 episodes for that reason. We want a part 2.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
So we are actively recruiting, and it's not a high bar. So consider yourself part of the Alita Army, Doc, and we'll have you back anytime. Okay, so as you are part of the Alita Army, that is why you're here on the live stream. And anybody who's in chat, we have been trying to get Sin of Sanity on, but Sin of Sanity is a bit concerned about his English. I think it's for him. But if you're a bit concerned about how you might come across on this, the official Alita Army live stream, you can join on the hashtag Alita stream, which is on a day before, run by Creaky and Angelus up there, and they're quite willing to let you just jump on at any point during the conversation and have a go. So that's your starting point. That was Doc Joe's starting point. He jumped on that stream and had a good time and has now joined us on this one. And you too could follow in Doc Joe's illustrious footsteps and start off in the Alita stream on the Friday night US, and then come and join us on this one when you're feeling more confident. So please consider that as an option.
Sin Sanity, your comments were really insightful, and I personally would love to have a conversation with you sometime.
I agree. All right. 100%.
So we're going to line up Sin of Sanity and Doc Joe to have a conversation. That's got to happen.
And Robert.
I keep dragging Robert in. Robert's got some good comments.
Get ready for like a 5-6 hour stream.
We'll solve all of the world's problems that philosophers have been working on for 3,000 years. We'll do it in 90 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to sit back and watch that.
Make it a topic worth talking about, and I'll even get up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning to host it.
All right, so on that point, thank you so much for this week's guest for coming on, Billy Blair, who ducked out before things got really deep, but that's cool. We really learned a lot from him, and I'm really grateful for him to come on. Thank you, Foxfire, Robert from Sci-Fi Remnant, and Doc Joe from Storyweaver Games. We hope to hear more from you guys in the future as you come back and talk to us with more really cool content. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us. We really enjoy you coming along and listening in and being part of the text chat. And do consider coming on and be part of the voice chat. We want to get more angles from different members of the Alita Army. It's not hard. You're just having a conversation. It doesn't all have to be as deep as what these guys have been talking about, but we do want your opinions, and we would like you to join us on one of these 2 live streams at some point. It is good fun. We do enjoy it. And once you do it, you get hooked. You want to come back again and again. So thank you for listeners for joining us. You are what makes the fandom special. This is why we do this. We do this for you guys because the fandom is special and important, and we want to keep us all together as a big family, supporting Alita into the future as we get our sequels. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for joining us. And as we like to do at the end of all our live streams, the call to action, 3, 2, 1. Bye, baby. Thanks for coming, and see you next week. Bye for now.
You know, back when I was in the academy, we would follow every toast with a song.
That's an interesting twist.